Do not disturb. Okay. Okay. Let's do the thing. This is the Acton Select Board. If you're here for a different meeting, you're at the wrong meeting, unless you're here for the FinCom, because they'll be starting their meeting in a little bit, because we're going to do some stuff together. Our meeting was scheduled to start at 7. It's just a couple minutes after 7. We need to have a quorum here, and in fact, we are all here. We start our meetings with resident concerns. Dean got really positive reviews last time for doing the timekeeping, so he's agreed to do it again. He has a yellow sheet for when there's 1 minute left and a red sheet for when the 3 minutes are up. So let's hear from residents.
Hi, this is Tara again from West Acton, up on the hill, and I heard through the grapevine that somebody from the state Department of Transportation or something was looking at the Nagog intersection and was talking about a roundabout. And I think that's an awesome idea. If you can have one over at 111 and you can have one up at 2A, I wonder if you can have one at Hayward. So I find the roundabouts much more friendly. They don't require constant electricity. People don't speed up to get there before the red light or the yellow light, and I'll just say that. So I'm not expecting or hoping for any action tonight. I am just putting the idea on the table, and then I am also hoping that the select board takes some action and make a statement, at least have a discussion about Gaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see another person approaching.
Hello, Scott Smyers, Central Street. How you doing? On November 20th, we had a meeting. I made some comments during the meeting, but then at the end, Ms. Nickel claimed to have gotten some emails that brought my comments back to her attention. I've asked for those emails. I haven't got those emails. Do those emails exist is a question that I have, but I don't want to be cut off because my time is short. I would love to hear your answers to my questions, but if you do answer my questions, I would like it if that doesn't get deducted from my cumulative time. So do those emails exist? Were they just made up?
No, the emails exist, and in fact, the records request is being processed and should be on your way by approximately now, since it was due now.
Okay, great. Second, Ms. Nickel wasted no time but to issue an apology on behalf of the select board, I think, maybe the whole town, for my remarks. What are the criteria for issuing an apology? Do you want to address me now since I'm here? I left the room at that point. I was waiting for some more details about these emails that I still haven't seen. I know at least one member of the select board said, whoa, you don't apologize on behalf of me. So is that a standard policy that we have now where you can issue an apology, defame the character of a citizen by misrepresenting their words clearly? It's just unfair. I don't like it. And I really don't think you should be making any decisions on behalf of the town when it comes to topics that have to do with sensitive topics that have to do with interpreting remarks as racist, because you're clearly, two of you at least are completely unqualified to do that, Ms. Nickel and Mr. Martin. You know, they've demonstrated that in the past. You know, Mr. Martin talks about the statements he could show for, he could bring to us demonstrating the racist comments of the, during the colonial mascot period. He has it ready on his computer sometimes. So let me just read you one of his examples of the 800-something emails that they got at that time. If someone doesn't like the mascot, then maybe they should have thought about that before they moved to Acton-Boxborough. That's one of his examples of racism. From his comments on January
Dean's raised the
25th,
little red card.
January 25th, 2021, during a select board meeting. I could go on, but I can't because
True.
I've been cut off.
Yes,
But
we're trying to keep everyone to 3
There's
minutes.
about 8 comments that he makes. A couple of them are very distasteful. I agree. But to say that they were all based in racism and hate is totally wrong and makes him unqualified. Alyssa Nickel.
Do I get to do
I'm
the
waiting for
gavel
your
thing
apology.
again, or?
She
you get it
apologizes.
out?
She apologizes for other people, but she won't apologize for herself.
Okay. Thank you. There might be others. There's one online. Matt, why don't we let the person online speak for up to 3 minutes?
Where's Mr. Chair? Charlie Cadlock? Charlie should be able to speak.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Charlie.
First, I want to thank all of you, especially Jim, for ignoring Tara Friedrich's repeated requests to discuss the war in Israel. Tara is free to think whatever she wants and to be on the side of Hamas if she chooses. If she doesn't know that Hamas has it in its charter to kill all the Jews, then she's ignorant. If she does know it, then she's anti-Semitic. In either case, that's her problem. I hope you will continue to ignore her request because it's not up to the select board of the town of Acton to tell Israel how to conduct its war. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Anyone else online? Okay. Just got to say, one of the hardest parts of this process is just to remember that citizens have the right to say what they want to say here and just sit and listen, but it's important. Okay, that's resident concerns. Chair update, town manager update, and member minute. What do I got here? I don't have much. There are now a lot of delayed agenda items. We've had a series, the last 2 meetings were, 5 hours or more, which is very brutal for everyone, staff, board, people in the audience, and especially, for those of you that were waiting for things near the end of agendas and we didn't get to them, I apologize. And so I've taken a different approach now, which is to, spread these things out over the next, as many meetings as it takes to keep our meetings a little shorter. I went through the current agenda. I think we're going to get through it in 4 hours or less, which is an improvement from 5 hours. It's not ideal, but it's a little more human. I think that's all I had for chair update. Town manager update?
Good evening. Just a note that be careful on the roads out there. I think the rain has happened all day long, and it's now turning into flooding in certain areas. I think our DPW and other folks are out doing their best to clear ways where they can, but just be careful, particularly people that are here. Be careful driving home tonight. On my way here, it was pretty bad over at 27 near Conant Well. So hopefully, I think they're putting a detour up, but just take it a little bit slower on your way back and make sure that the road in front of you isn't flooded. And other than that, nice to see everybody.
Welcome back. Are there a lot of us that had flooded basements, or is it just John, or how'd it go? Are your basements dry, pretty much? No? Okay. Okay, at least Fran has also been hit by the storm, so, yeah. Good luck, everybody. Do take it easy out there. There might be member minutes.
Two for me. just to acknowledge that there was a great event last week, the dedication of the menorah, and certainly congratulations and thanks to Fran for helping facilitate that. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the tremendous assistance that the 250 Committee has been receiving from the Acton Memorial Library. They've really done a great job with finding appropriate programming and hosting everything for us, and just my thanks to the AML staff and trustees.
Thanks. Fran?
I echo Dean. The menorah dedication was such a great event. It was really a nice gathering of community. And I want to thank Tom Bijan for pulling together the policy so quickly, and not to forget that, many eyes were on the policy. We had our DEI director had input, and, Department of Public Works for installation. So many folks turned around very quickly. So I'm thankful for that. I wanted to just report that, what day is it? Oh, it's Monday. Saturday's Eagle Scout Court of Honor was all the time a lovely event. Katie Dallimore, who is the first Eagle Scout for Boxborough Troop 12. It's such a great event, and I had a great time presenting from Acton, the Isaac Davis Medal and a certificate, and also town elections. I just wanted to alert folks that it's election time. I will be rerunning, but I'd love to have other folks throw their hat in the ring. And you can find the election calendar online on the town website. Thank you.
Thank you. David? Nothing for me. Okay. Alyssa?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that I'm holding office hours tomorrow, Tuesday the 19th, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Acton Memorial Library in the Solarium. Marian Maxwell put that information in her newsletter that goes to about 700 seniors. So I have asked Fran if she can join me in case there are 10 or 20 people who show up. So we'll be in different parts of the library. I imagine Fran will go upstairs in case folks want to talk about some issue that Fran and I cannot discuss because of open meeting law. So thank you, Fran. I also wanted to announce that the survey for the library's strategic planning process is now live, and I encourage everyone to take that survey. You can find it on the Memorial Library website. If you go to the About Us link and then look on Library News, or if you're on the homepage, you can just scroll down to the blog, or if you follow the library's page on Facebook, you can find the link there. So it's really important. This is a 5-year plan to get as much feedback from residents as possible. The pandemic has made a huge impact on how people use the library, as well as the increase in digital resources and changing community needs. So I encourage everybody to help have a voice in shaping the future of the 2 Acton libraries.
Thank you. Okay, now we have a part of the meeting called a public hearing. Yes. I get to read this thing. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on December 18th at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, and virtually on the application of Scott Mistrella for a special use permit under zoning bylaw section 3.5.11 and 10.3 at 77 Powder Mill Road. That's map J3 or parcel 50 for those of you who are online looking at the Acton GIS. And there's a bunch of material online or at Town Hall if you want to take a look at it. Is it possible that Scott's here and could, great, come on up. We'd love to hear about the planned use, and we'll probably have questions, and the public might have questions.
Awesome, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Scott Michella, and I am requesting a special permit for the Posh Pup. It is a dog daycare facility, and we will be doing just daycare only with a pet boutique. And I'm going to keep it small, boutique, different from other dog daycares in the area where they often have many dogs, large groups. We're going to keep it smaller and really focus on the dog and, you know, develop a relationship with the community.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Members might have questions. Alyssa, David? Go ahead, Alyssa.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. I did notice that the Acton Water District has asked for a plan for the collection of dog waste to avoid any contamination because the location is within Ground Protection Zone 2. And I was just wondering if you had started compiling that or...
Yes, I have. So I have been talking to Kayla with the town, and I requested a temporary fencing area outside to control the dog waste, and we'll be sanitizing that nightly and bagging the stool immediately. And also, you know, we have to clean up right away anyway for the dogs to avoid them getting into it as well.
David?
Hi, thank
Hi.
you. About how many dogs is small?
So about 30 dogs is our limit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. It's probably for staff, if there's anyone from planning who's here. Yes, John is nodding his head. And we're finding that person, and I'm going to ask.
I'm guessing it's the Historic District Commission with their hand raised. I think that's Kristen.
Oh, okay, great. So the question is, since there used to be a dog daycare at the site previously, is there the previous board's decision on that special permit that's available anywhere?
Hi, good evening. It's Kristen Guichard, Planning Director for the Town of Acton. We could provide that to the board if they wish. We don't have that for you tonight, but we could get that for you if you're interested.
Okay. A related question, Kristen. About how many dog daycare places are there in Acton?
That is a good question. We would need to do a little bit of research to find out. I don't know the number off the top of my head, sorry.
Okay. And the last question is, is there any either written or just recollection of any sorts of issues that have shown up with these establishments in the past that we might want to pay attention to as we think about, requirements and conditions?
The one thing that comes to mind is, locations that might be closer to a lot of residential locations, just in terms of noise, if the dogs are outside. But in this particular location, it's very far away from a residential area. It's kind of buffered there in the back too. It's actually a beautiful place along the river in the Powder Mill district. So I don't think that concern would come to play in this particular spot.
Okay, thank you. Are there other select board questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'm intrigued and excited for the boutique.
Thank you.
Dean, any thoughts? No? Okay. And Alyssa has another question.
Sorry, just one more. The plan, as it is referred to in the special permit draft, is the application. And in the application, there's a note that grooming services may be added in the future. And I'm just wondering, if that happens, does this need to come back to the board? Because the Water District also had a comment about a water impact, and if the water use exceeds a certain number of gallons per day. I think it was 200.
That might be a good question for Kristen about dog grooming either requiring a special permit and then we can ask the applicant about water use.
Sure, Mr. Chair. So I think that type of like grooming would be something that's a typical accessory use to boarding of an animal. So I don't think it would be outside of that type of service that's being provided. You could include that just to make that clear in your decision. In terms of the amount of water that's being used, that's really handled by the Acton Water Department. So your permit wouldn't really, supersede unless you wanted it to be restricted to a certain, certain parameter of that use. But the Acton Water District, as you know, is a separate governmental body, and so they have their own process to deal with that.
Thanks. So Scott, as Kristen was explaining, the Acton Water District is this separate entity from the town, and they do have this requirement that you fill out a water impact study report. It'll be important to mention in there, the possibility of doing grooming and any kind of predictions you can give about the water use associated with that.
Okay. I know there was a groomer there before, previously, in the middle, and the vet took over that spot now. So I think that, there should be plenty of water if we did want to decide to go down that route. But primarily daycare for now.
Okay. And has anyone sent you in the direction of the water district for this water impact report that you need to fill out?
Yes, so I
Great.
already sent him the calculations from the landlord, the predictions on it.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This is a public hearing, and there might be comments or questions from the audience, either people here or people online. Not seeing anyone here. Is there anyone online? No, okay. Then that might be just a fine time to entertain a motion about this. Oh, no, wait, first we're gonna, if I remember the order, closing the hearing. I would happily entertain a motion to close the hearing, and then we'll make a decision together.
Okay.
I move to close the hearing.
Second?
Okay, any discussion about that motion? No, all those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, I heard 5 yeses or ayes, so we've closed the hearing. Now we're gonna start deliberating. We're gonna both talk about whether we want to approve this permit and whether there's any special conditions we want to add. But to get the discussion started, would anyone like to make a motion about approving of the special permit? Go for it.
I move to approve the special site permit on the request. Do I?
Here we go. Special use permit?
I have something.
Oh, no, that's a different one, isn't it?
I have the decision if it was granted.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so I think you're just asking that we approve the special use permit.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
what he said.
That's a motion. There might be a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, now we're going to have some discussion. David?
I'm just wondering legally if we need to provide a little bit more detail in the motion?
Yes. Oh, can I see it? Boy, I didn't get that.
I think you say you need to approve maybe his name, his address, and the type of use.
Okay, great. We're going to amend this motion to include all the relevant facts.
Yeah. So I move to approve the decision of the Acton Select Board on the request of Scott Moschella of 69 Oak Street, Lexington, Mass., for the property located at 77 Powder Mill Road in Acton, Massachusetts. The decision is response to an application for the use special permit submitted to the Select Board on November 8th, 2023 pursuant to sections 3.5.11 and 10.3 of the Acton zoning bylaw to establish and operate an animal boarding facility in the Powder Mill zoning district, herein after the use. The board considered the request at a duly noticed public hearing on December 18th, 2023. Board members Jim Snyder Grant, Chair, Francesca Arsenal, Dean Charter, David Martin, and Alyssa Nickel were present. The minutes of the meeting and submissions, we don't have to read them. Yeah, thanks.
I'll second that.
Okay, now we've got a really proper motion there, which has been read from a piece of paper, so it's likely to be official. Any comments about conditions? Alyssa?
So I would like to add the condition that let me get the name of this correctly. The plan for disposal of dog feces be provided to the Acton Water District, and also that if the water use is greater than 200 gallons per day, if grooming is added, that an updated water impact report go to the water district. Because it sounds like they're already in process of giving one now based on current use.
Great, we can make sure that that condition is in there. There's also some mandatory findings we have to go through together. So why don't I read these, and if there's any concern about any of these, we can have a deeper discussion. Otherwise, we can just roll these into our permit. So we have to find that the proposed use is consistent with the master plan, is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this bylaw, will not be detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood in which it is to take place, is appropriate for the site in question, and complies with all applicable requirements of this bylaw. Any concerns about us agreeing to those findings? No? Okay, good. And we do have a draft decision attached somewhere here, right? Sorry, I don't have this all printed out for myself. And it seems like we would be, the only additional thing I've heard here is that we would add, as you were saying, Alyssa, the explicit requirement to report, to send in the plan about the handling of dog feces to the Acton Water District. Kristen, is there any problem with adding that to this decision?
No, I don't see any issue with that. I think those would be requirements that would happen anyway, so it might just be extra reminders, so it doesn't
Okay,
hurt.
great.
Kristen, it's already in there, 311.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
If you wanted to add, I think the piece about if they go over 200 gallons per day, though,
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
part may be more specific. So if you're interested in just still doing that, I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I see what Alyssa's talking about. I hadn't seen the 3.1 draft decision that does include a plan detailing the control and disposal of dog waste to prevent contamination of groundwater. Okay, sorry for being so somewhat randomly prepared for this one. So we have a draft decision here. Are there any other additional edits that people would like to see in that draft decision? No? So it sounds like there's a motion on the table to approve it. It sounds like you might want to amend that to say that as written by the planning department or something like that, and then we can check it out, see where we're at.
So I'd amend the motion as read to be as written by the planning department.
Great. Is you okay with re-seconding that?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye or yes. Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, that's from everybody. So you have a unanimous decision to go ahead, and if you don't have a copy of this decision, one will be given to you shortly.
Okay.
And please go off and have a wonderful dog
Thank you, guys.
daycare.
Have a great night. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, now we're launching into new and special business. The only change I see here is I'm going to swap 5 and 6. So we're going to get an update on Acton Leadership Group right after presenting the town manager's recommended level service budget and having questions, and then do the CPA stuff right after that. And look, it's the Finance Committee, they're here. So they could call their meeting to order and bring placards up if they want to, and please join us for this part, which is the presentation of the town manager FY 2025 recommended level service budget. And welcome here.
Thank you for having us. Noting the time of 7:30 and the presence of a quorum, I called today's Acton Finance Committee meeting to order.
Thank you. So we're going to have a presentation from John, and then we're going to have questions. And for those of you at home, this is also available in the packet.
Well, good evening, everyone. Members of the board, members of the Finance Committee. I'm honored to present this fiscal year 2025 recommended budget. This is a budget that we've been working on since the summer, and I think we've engaged in a pretty interesting process. A lot of new staff in the organization have really contributed and made this, I think, probably the best looking budget, and with the most content and easiest to read content that I think we've had ever. So I want to thank the finance team and others, our new assistant town manager and others for helping get this budget out leading up to tonight. So in most years, I like to spend a lot of time talking about a lot of the amazing things that our staff and this community does on an annual basis, and I hope to have an opportunity to do that soon. But I think tonight I'm fast forwarding to the numbers. Well, I'll do a little bit of narrative, but mostly numbers, because I think that's what a lot of people are interested in hearing tonight. So to start, I wanted to just touch base on where we are with FY24, the current fiscal year. The budget was approved at town meeting, and I think things were going along okay. And then our health insurance program ran into some serious issues with very high claim activity, catastrophic claim activity, and it required the trust to issue an assessment, mid-year assessment to both the town and the school district, and to increase our rates almost 23% mid-year, which is unheard of, at least in my experience. It's a pretty big increase to happen on an annual basis. To happen mid-year, it created a lot of challenges for us from a financial standpoint. So to meet that mid-year cost increase, we've implemented cost control measures in the budget, the current budget. We're not filling positions right now to make sure that we have enough funding available to pay for that. We're also doing some other cost controls. And if needed, we'll be requesting a transfer at the upcoming town meeting from reserves to cover any gap that we're not able to fill with these measures that we've employed. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is that our capital needs are continuing to be something that we're focused on. We just completed a 10-year facility study, which was great. It didn't just give us information about the needs of the facilities, but it also gave us a roadmap to electrify them. Because if you're going to go through the trouble of replacing a system, it makes sense based on the climate action goals we have here to convert it to electric at the same time. And this plan mapped that out for us over the next 10 years. It's an expensive project, but it's something that we're going to continue to figure out how to do. And just aging infrastructure in the community, continuing to create priority assistance and sidewalks and other things that people need, people want. They want pedestrian amenities, and we hear about that. I think I mentioned this before, that I get very few complaints here. I think town services people love them. One of the only things that we ever hear about is we want sidewalks in our neighborhood. We want sidewalks near the school. We want sidewalks here. We want sidewalks there. It's something that we hear a lot of. So, as I mentioned, the budget we've been working on, we are tonight at the presentation of the budget, and there'll be a workshop in early January to continue discussing it, and that'll get us on a path to town meeting the first week of May. In developing a budget, all the departments are very aware of the select board goals. We actually have a meeting, a big meeting in August, I think we had it this year, where we went through the goals and discussed the budget process and made sure that we understood that the budgets that we put forward need to be responsive to these goals. This year, we had 16 goals, short-term goals, and it covered a wide range of services and projects and programs, and we did our best to address those in the budget. These are available online at actonma.gov/SB for Select Board, if you want to check them out yourself. There was also 7 long-term goals, which we are also focused on, and we try our best to address all of them because the Select Board set the priorities for the organization, and the budget is supposed to implement those priorities. So some of the things that we're investing, infrastructure, resilience, you saw today, bridges and culverts are being strained. Our infrastructure out there can't handle a storm like this necessarily, but we need to make sure that it can handle just regular storms, and there's a lot of work that we need to do to make that happen. We need to replace the fuel station that all of our departments use, and the school district uses, and Case Transportation uses. It's at the end of life for pump fuel systems, and it needs to be replaced. We're also doing several roadway safety projects. We're rebuilding staffing to help ensure that we can maintain our roads, maintain our sidewalks. As we build new sidewalks, we need to be able to maintain them. As we plant trees, as we develop beautiful parks, we need to be able to maintain these facilities. We're also aggressively pursuing sustainability initiatives. We're focusing the needs, it was mentioned earlier, the needs of the library are evolving, and we're making sure that we continue to invest in the libraries to support those needs. We're enhancing public spaces, building parks, several parks underway right now. Gardner Field is nearly completed. River Street is needing funding, but we're continuing that project. There's a dog park funded through a grant. Another park, there'll be a community resource outside here behind the town hall where the Asa Parlin house abuts. We're continuing to improve our facilities. We've incorporated firework funding in the budget so that that tradition can remain part of what we do here as a community. It's not just buying the fireworks, which is expensive, but we also fund through overtime in our police and fire budgets a lot of resources for that day. So it's an expensive project, but the 2 or 3 years that we didn't have it, I think we heard a lot from the community that it wanted it to come back, and we're excited to have it come back this year, and the budget funds it going forward, in addition to continuing to support the 250th efforts to make that a special occasion for the community. And finally, we're working with our new principal assessor, CJ Carroll, and the rest of the assessor's office and the organization to make sure that people that are paying taxes understand that there are programs that they could potentially benefit from to provide relief. And we say that a lot, but we want to make sure that you actually open up this book. This is a picture of a book that's 20 pages full of information that people should look at. So, I mentioned capital needs. We updated our 2025 to 2034 capital plan. It's a 10-year plan. In fiscal year 25 alone, we identified more than 17 million projects, $17 million in projects that we need to do. The things that need to happen, they were identified in the plan to happen this year. It's a large undertaking, but there's a lot of different components to that, which I encourage you to review. It has a lot of detail in that document, which is available at actonma.gov/manager. So of the $17 million in projects, some of these projects I'm recommending that we defer. Some I'm recommending that we partially fund through other means, and I'll get more into this later. And same thing with the free cash projects. There were $4.2 million worth of projects requested. I'm recommending $1.21 million. And for the projects that aren't funded, I'm recommending that we defer them or seek alternative revenue or grants or find other ways to pay for them to ensure that the work does get done. And so how did that, what was that process? We did present the capital plan early to the Select Board and the Finance Committee. We did get a little bit of feedback, but we also looked at timing. We looked at project scheduling. Even though there's $17 million worth of needs, we can't do $17 million worth of projects next year. I mean, it would be very difficult to accomplish that, considering the work that we already have and that we're trying to get done. So when you balance the work that you can actually accomplish with the limited funding that we have available, that's what got the number down to 7.7 instead of 17 million. And so that's the three projects that we're proposing to borrow for are the DPW facility fueling station, the replacement of the ladder truck, and the intersection improvements at Main Street and Hayward. Those total project costs are 6.5 million, and the estimated debt service is just over $500,000, and that includes not the full borrowing debt cost for the fueling station, because I'm proposing that we share that cost with the school district. In free cash, the $1.2 million is made up of $300,000 for traffic calming and intersection improvements, $400,000 for bridge and culvert design and construction, $200,000 towards replacing the fire department's self-contained breathing apparatus that they wear during all their calls, $180,000 for railroad crossing improvements that are needed to maintain our quiet zone, $80,000 to start the cyclical data collection of all the real property in town, and $50,000 to start doing more design work on implementing the facility study priorities. So again, it's about a quarter of what was requested, but I think it's enough work to keep us busy and to advance a lot of important efforts and projects. So that is part of an overall budget here. There's a lot of numbers on this slide, but I told you I was going to get to the numbers, so here they are. I'll just walk you through this whole slide. So the columns, the first column is the fiscal year 24 budget that was approved at town meeting. And if you look at the bolded subtitles, the total operations were 37.8 million, total spending sorry. Anyways, if you look at the FY25 level services budget that we're proposing today, it's a total spending of 42.5 million. That is almost a $4 million increase over FY24. It is, and 7.64% of that is made up of increases to the operating budget. And the rest of that is a substantial increase in the capital investments that we made compared to last year. It's 158% more in capital than it was last year, which is a very high percentage, but I think it's a point that was made through the earlier budget discussions, is that on an annual basis, we pick from a list of projects that we know we need to do, and we identify a small portion of those that we can afford, and that continues to require us to defer projects that need to be completed. And this budget is an attempt to not defer as many this year. We're still deferring projects, but we're not trying to not defer as many. With regards to the budget itself, I think some of the things that I wanted to mention about this budget is that we're proposing an offset from other post-employment benefits trust, which is, right now we have about $10 million set aside to pay for health insurances for retirees when they retire, including all the employees that are working today. And that money is needed. We need to make sure that we have enough for everyone when they're retired to pay for the rest of their lives. But I think we're at a point now where it's appropriate to start looking at using some of that money to pay for the retirees that we're paying for right now. We pay almost $1.1 million a year in retiree health insurance from the operating budget. A lot of those retirees are from the schools, when the schools used to be part of the town budget. A lot of those retirees, we want to pay for them, but I think it makes sense to pay for them from the trust that was created for that purpose. And I'm not suggesting that we empty the trust out, but I'm suggesting that we start utilizing it and at the same time continue contributing to the trust so that we maintain a steady increase to the trust, but also use it for some of the benefits that we're providing. I wanted to walk through some of the work that we did to develop this budget. To be able to afford the budget that we have, even though it seems like, and it is the largest percentage budget increase that I've ever presented here, we still did a lot of different things to get this number down from what it was from level services. And I just wanted to walk you through a few of those. I already mentioned the first, which was the health insurance trust. And a second item is that we're proposing to use funding from the Avalon-Acton development. The mitigation funds were set aside for public safety needs that support public safety in the North Acton. And I think there are two projects that we need to do that would fit perfectly into that category, which was the radio replacement project and part of this SCBA replacements. I already mentioned the proposed cost sharing with the schools for the fuel depot. We're going to continue to use the energy efficiency fund to offset the incremental cost of purchasing energy efficiency related equipment and other sustainability related projects. We're going to review our ambulance fees, and I believe that they need to be increased to keep up with the market. And I think that that's a proposal that we would bring to the board hopefully in January. And what that would do is that it would better capture the funding needed to support the service that we're providing, and it could potentially reduce the amount of funding that we set aside as a subsidy to the ambulance enterprise. We've also continued to look at ways to reduce costs. As I mentioned, we modified the capital plan to reduce that. We've also deferred several staffing requests that I think we get every year. We get several staffing requests and we often can't fill all of them. And this year, there's a few that we didn't fill in the fire department, the police department, the recreation, and the operations department. And so we'll look for ways to provide those resources through reorganizations like we've done in the past. And as people retire or move along, we can try to find ways to shift things around to meet those needs, but we're not adding those FTEs to the budget because it's just not a good time to do that. We're also starting a process tomorrow to work with the Health Insurance Working Group to try to see if we can come up with some creative solutions to reduce our health insurance budget. I mean, I talked about a different way to fund it, but I think it makes sense to find if there's ways that we can reduce the cost of it in the first place. And I think there'll be hopefully some good ideas, and hopefully something will come out of that before the next fiscal year starts. Other efficiency measures is we do intermunicipal agreements. We share services with Littleton for an electrical inspector, with Boxborough for veteran services. We've reorganized departments to expand our capacity without increasing our personnel. We've done that in Health and Human Services, in the Finance Department, in the Operations Department. We staff an every workday hotline called the Town Services Hotline. We staff that with existing administrative staff coordinated by Kristen Alexander, and that's increasing our services without adding any staff. And so we continue to do things like that every year. We bring in millions of dollars worth of grants, and that really makes a big difference in what we're asking the town to pay for, because if we can get all this money from other sources, it frees up resources for other needs in the community. So, in developing this budget, the board directed me to do two things. One was to propose a FY25 budget based on level services. And that's what I just did. And hopefully you read the budget online. It's much more articulate than my presentation's been so far. But the other thing they asked me to do is they asked me to prepare a list of cuts that we were required if we were going to only do a budget that was limited to a 3% increase over FY24. And so if we were going to do that, a 3% increase over 24 would require a reduction of approximately $2.8 million from the budget that I just presented. And to give you a sense of what that challenge is for us, if you take our health insurance increase and our pension increase, just those two items, from what we paid last year to what we need to pay in FY24, that alone is a 3.1% increase. So a 3% budget is not possible unless we change several things, including those. So as a result, a 3% budget would result in significant underfunding of capital needs and several reductions in municipal services. And so I was asked to create a list, and this is a list. If I needed to cut $2.8 million, and recommend that to the board to be further prioritized, this is what I'd say. I'd say we should reduce $1.2 million in capital, and we should consider reducing $1.2 million from the operating budget. And what does that look like? Reducing $1.2 million from the operating budget is 10 to 15 positions. We would focus, if that was what we had to do, we would focus on positions that are vacant to reduce the impacts to people. We would eliminate events that we pay for, July 4th, flu clinics, hazardous waste day, et cetera. We would really clamp down on equipment replacements, police cruisers. We would really slow that down. We would change the way we maintain our parks, rail trails, and arboretum, and other assets. I think we're trying to improve that, and this cut would kind of take us a step back in those areas. We'd also look at the libraries. I think that many communities don't have Sunday hours. Many communities don't have the number of hours that we have, and so I think we would look at that as a change to make. And then finally, we would look at the subsidies I mentioned earlier and reduce those. The budget calls for $540,000 worth of subsidies this year for ambulance and transportation, and I think we could look to reduce that at least $400,000. And what that would do, it would require us to reduce ambulance staffing, and it would require us to eliminate transportation programs. So those are the things that I would ask the board to consider if it wanted to reduce that level of services budget by $2.8 million.
Thanks so much, John. I think there's probably a number of questions from both the Finance Committee and the Select Board. One way to just be to start at one end and work our way around to the other. So why don't we do that? You might have a question or two.
I'll defer to the longer tenured members of the Finance Committee.
Happy to come back to you. Yeah, thanks, John. As you said, the document improves every year. I think it's great and continues to get better. A lot of really good information. One thing I'll ask just for starters is, I know you break out the individual departments below and the number of FTEs. Is there a summary FTE for the town side of the budget of just the number of headcount and what new positions are being added or removed?
No, we should have that, though. That's a good idea.
Yeah, just one suggestion, but again, it's a great document. And to that, do you have a total town FTE count just off the cuff that you know? And is the same number for the FY25 from FY24? Maybe saying a different way is, what is the difference between 24 and 25?
So I think the easiest way to describe that would be the positions that we're adding to the budget this year are 3. 2 of them are in, well, one of them is a DPW crew member. One is a project manager position to support all the projects that we're trying to complete. And the third, The third is I've set aside additional funding in comp reserve if there's a need to increase staffing at the library. The library director asked for more resources for teens. I think that's a gap in services there where they're trying to focus. And initially, there was a budget request to increase a staff person. And I think we're looking at ways to do that without actually adding a full staff person, but just changing hours. So it's almost 3 positions.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. And then, if I'm looking at the salary increases, is it a 4.4% number that you're building up to for the total budget? I think that's right. And I guess just where I'm going with this is you just have a general sense of what the average cost is per FTE from FY24 to FY25.
Yeah, so the salaries are going up 4.4%, if you consider everything.
So if you X out those 2 to 3 employees, I mean, maybe the number's low 4% or something, and that's maybe an apples to apples sort of salary increase year over year?
Yes, it would reduce that amount, yes.
Okay.
And that 4.43% also includes increases in overtime, which isn't necessarily new people, but we did need to address some overtime issues that needed more funding in fire in particular. So the 4.43% isn't all salary increase.
Great, and then one more, just the fueling station at DPW. We talked about this a week or two ago, and one thought I had was just, is there a temporary solution to this? Because it does seem like, at least the way the town is planning, that there's a finite use of that fueling station, and I think you hinted maybe it was 10 years. And is there a temporary solution that wouldn't be near the cost of this? And again, the solution as it is now, I guess technically would be temporary.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in communities where the fuel depot was only used by the highway department and other departments filled up at local gas stations. And it's, in some ways, it's certainly less equipment that you need to maintain, but it's harder to manage. And I think ideally you'd have a fuel depot where you can acquire the energy at a reduced rate and distribute to the vehicles and apparatus that will still need to use it for, I would say, 10 years at least, which is a long time to not have an efficient system in place. And I think the fact that we have an opportunity to partner with a few other organizations to make this a regional project. If you look at it, it's a regionalization is what I'm proposing, because it's not just Acton and Boxborough schools that use it. It's Case Transportation, which represents 5 or 6 communities. So it's a regional project to replace this fuel depot, and I think it makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, particularly if we do it in the partnership way, more so than creating an arrangement with a gas station and what would go into a temporary solution.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, John. From the years I've been sitting on this, on the FinCom, this is a big improvement over what we received before. No question about it. A lot of work went into it, and I do appreciate that for your staff and your time. Looking over some of the tables, page 22, personal property, it's showing, I think, 529 million, which doesn't make sense because that adds up to the total of commercial. It's at 519, 172, 394. The prior year is 110, 059, 954. So my calculation looked at that should be about 124, 264.90 on that line, because you have the total commercial property at 519, 172, 394, the same as personal property, which when you add commercial and industrial together, that's what you get. The other one was on delinquent tax collections. seems like we've been collecting every year. 21, there was a nice little spike up, that we got some additional tax collections under delinquent tax collections. But then in FY '22, doesn't have anything in there. And it seems like that the total collection percent of net levy collected was 99.34, where the prior year is 99.56, and then 99.28 the subsequent year after that. So I would expect that we did collect something that year from delinquents, but maybe we didn't. So I don't know if there's, if you can let us know at some future point. What is the life expectancy of a ladder truck in the Northeast? Is that, it looks like the one was what, 2009?
Yeah, I think we want to try to get 20 years out of it, but replace it before 20 years comes. And, it takes 3 years to build.
Right.
So if the town authorizes it in 2024, it would be delivered in 2027, which would make it, the one that we have now,
18 years old.
18 years old.
I was just curious, because maybe there's an aftermarket for the one that we have or something, I don't know. So cut down the cost if we don't need 2 ladder trucks. I have seen it used recently, so it was good to, down at the Trader Joe's, in that area, that they were up one night on top of the roof on a weekend we had that big power outage. Fuel station, fuel depot, I think it's gonna be that's gonna be there a lot longer than 10 years. I was looking over the numbers and said, wow, the budget's really high for fuel, it's gone up. Could be spot market, but prices have come down recently on fuel. But then when I look at it deeper, all the DPWs, all the town vehicles. So I'd also wouldn't mind to see the town do an in-depth analysis of the number of vehicles that are used by the town hall, by town staff, and if we really need them all, as we are replacing with electrics. Maybe it's time to get rid of some of the ones that we don't use as much. I mean, but definitely keep the hybrids, because I think that's also another way to go. We're not necessarily getting full electric, but get a good solid, maybe it's a year-old or a 2-year-old hybrid that has a lot of life left in it, and can definitely start saving money right away.
Thank you. We have been doing that. The last few vehicles we purchased were two out, one in, to reduce the volume of vehicles back there in particular. And we'll continue to do that, because I think we're using them differently now, and I think we'll be able to do that better than we could have done it 3 years ago. So,
Thanks. I think maybe also having a dedicated area where the town vehicles are parked at night, so that it's not taking up spots near the town hall or near the library when they're in use with meetings and things like that. So the citizens and people that come to the meetings don't have to park way down the end of the parking lot, where those vehicles that are not used at night can be easily parked.
Yeah, Dave, just a quick follow-up.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
On the fuel station, how many tanks is it composed of? And, what's the average life of those tanks? Do you know that offhand?
there's I think there's 4, and they're 30-year. We try to get 30 years out of them.
Do you know where they are now in that life?
I think we're at the end of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's why this is an urgent project, is that we're either at or near the end of the expected life for the tanks.
Okay. Sorry, just one more is, do you know how is the utilization of those tanks, been the last 10 years with the fleet? I think we talked about this a week or two ago, is, presumably 20 years ago, they were 100% utilized, and now are they 50%? I mean, I'm just wondering, is this 2.6 million, is it to fully replace them, or is it to partially replace them? I mean, what actually is that cost?
It's the cost of the project to fit it out with a gas, unleaded and a diesel for town, and an unleaded and diesel for school, and all the modern infrastructure and systems that you need to have when you're handling energy like that, which, ours are safe, but they're not modern, and we would have a new modern system. In terms of the specific build-out, I can share the design that we have at this point, if you have questions about that, but.
Yeah, maybe follow up offline, but I'm just curious the usage that they get compared to historical norms.
I don't think it's changed dramatically. I think the amount of electric vehicles that we have is, even though it's more than most communities, I think it's still a pretty small number compared to the overall fleet.
Well, John, this is the best presentation in budget book presenting the worst news I've seen in roughly 20 years. Just a couple of quick questions. How many vacant positions do we currently have?
We have several. We have held positions vacant this year. I would say if you consider part-time and full-time, it's probably close to 15.
Okay. And professional salaries are going up like 9.4%. So there's at least a project manager in that number. Am I to assume the rest of it is just normal salary increases?
Yes, that's correct.
So how much are you allocating for a project manager?
85, 87, around there. Is it 90? 90. Sorry, Mary Ann Fleckner is in the audience. There's not enough room at the table for her, but she's...
Mike, you can have the job if you bid 70. That's all, thank you.
Dean?
So under your, the proposed 3% budget cut down from level services, and you mentioned about library services, I hope when you look at these, you look at all options, including, is it more beneficial to add hours and staffing to the Memorial Library and, at least on the short-term basis, shutter the West Acton Citizens Library?
Okay, thanks.
That's it.
Brian? Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything right now. I've been studying it and just enjoying it and admiring it.
My only question or request is for you, Mr. Chair, that I would like to have the board come back to the capital priorities at a future meeting. The town manager has made a proposal which is a little bit different than the priorities that the board expressed the last time we discussed capital, and I'd just like to kind of finalize that and reconcile that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to thank all of the staff. I very much enjoyed reading this, even though it was not so great news. I appreciated a lot the recent projects and all of the descriptions of the services that are provided. I think that's very helpful for the public to understand what it is they're getting for their dollar. And I had the same question about the ladder truck, the life of the ladder truck, and according to the National Fire Protection Association, it's 10 to 15 years. And anything that is 15 years old and properly maintained should be placed in reserve status and upgraded. And we know already that we have an issue with our ladder truck because of a fire on the, no. He doesn't want me to talk about that. There's some sort of electrical issue and it's not working as it should be. So it does need to be replaced, but don't worry, we'll be able to put out the fires. Sorry. I wanted to make sure I understand that the budget includes the expected increase, the additional increase in health insurance rates, because when the Health Insurance Trust increased the rates mid-year to 22.8%, there was another increase expected. Is that folded into the budget?
You know, it's not. We asked that question, and I didn't understand that to be the case, that there would be an additional increase. I thought that 23% would get us what we needed from health insurance.
Okay, so that's, all right. So there won't be another increase. I wonder if there's any savings with leasing vehicles. I remember hearing some talk about like the police cruisers, leasing computers. And you said that was a good idea. Obviously, a computer is not a vehicle, but, and I'm not talking about just the police department, but all town vehicles. Is that a savings?
Yeah, thank you. It is a savings a little bit. We did try to work out it with Enterprise cars, or Enterprise, whatever they're called, a leasing program, and it didn't work. Their supply chain was not any better than what we were doing before, and it ended up making it harder for us to acquire vehicles. And so we do look at leasing as an option, and it certainly spreads the cost out. We do that for our heavy equipment. In the budget, in the DPW budget, there's $275,000, I believe, and that's all for lease-to-own payments that we have for our DPW heavy equipment. And we'll continue to explore that for smaller vehicles and other cars. The green, for example, if it's an electric, you get a better grant from green communities if it's a purchase than you do if it's a lease.
Okay.
But sometimes, it's all part of the decisions. But yes, to answer your question, leasing is definitely something that we are looking very closely at for all equipment.
Thank you for all of this. Curious, and I suspect you don't have the numbers on hand, you discussed a bunch of parks that are in process or have been added. I would love to understand the maintenance costs that come online with each, whatever square footage of a park or recreational equipment, et cetera, so we can quantify for the public. If we're going to add a park, it's not just you raise the money to put in the new playground, but it's going to cost this much in taxes going forward. So for some of these things we haven't finished yet, it would be especially good to quantify that. What is the school's thought on cost sharing for the depot?
I think it's pretty early in their process for that, but I believe that they value that resource. And it certainly is less expensive than going to the retail market. And so I think I'm optimistic that we'll have partners in this if we move it forward.
Yeah,
But again, it takes them to approve it. It has to go to the school committee. Then it has to go to the case collaborative, executive board, and all that. So.
And they're part of the case collaborative too, so it's not just them having that one chunk. And as we all know, they're having trouble. Now, you said that we're not currently adding FTEs on your 3% budget slide. If it had to stay at 3%, you talked about cutting, I believe, 10 to 15 positions. And I think you said that involves keeping some staff, some vacancies unfilled. Is that correct?
No, I think what I said is that if we had to cut 10 to 15 positions, I would focus on people that aren't here, positions that aren't filled, so that we're not laying people off.
Yeah, so
But there are positions that are vacant that I would not cut, and so that's not something that I've figured out yet, and I'll only figure that out if I'm asked to.
But it's not a blanket, 10 people who are here are gone July 1st necessarily. It's some people might go and some of these positions would stick around to be filled.
Yeah, so I don't know how to answer that, other than I was just preparing the conceptual list of what we would do, and if the board wants me to do that, then I'll work on that next. And so I haven't mapped out exactly what it would look like, but that's the order of magnitude for staffing reductions.
Yeah,
10 to 15.
I just wanted to get that idea in people's minds that it's not necessarily people are losing their jobs currently. It sounds like some would, but not necessarily all, depending on the allocation, et cetera. I don't want to confuse that further. One more thing, for the positions that are incurring overtime, I imagine some of it is the DPW related that you had proposed to hire for. Do you know whether any of the proposed hirings how much they would offset the overtime spending?
Having another person, which is what I'm proposing, will increase the capacity to do work throughout the day, throughout the year. and throughout a storm, like a microburst, if we had, and we have Jeff Rico is one of our workers, and I see him out there by himself, and if he had someone else with him, he'd be moving faster. And that's just the reality of it. So whether we would cut overtime, I'm not sure, because it would definitely help. And the issues that we're having for overtime are, and because of the microburst, we wiped out our DPW budget. And then for fire department, our overtime is running really high because we've had a lot of injuries. And so that requires us to fill that overtime. And so we're working on ways to help with that too. But I think certainly adding a staff to the highway crew would help spread out the need for overtime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangiarotti. I had some questions regarding the table on page 17 with the year-to-year expense comparisons. So the first thing relates to the overtime. So in FY23, we were approximately 56% over the proposed budget. I'm not sure where we come in FY24, but certainly it looks like FY25 is on the lower end of that range that we have, given that we've already incurred significant overtime costs this year. What is the likelihood that that is, further going to increase over the proposed budget?
Well, I think our overtime fluctuates, and it's really in the areas that it's most challenging to manage is in public safety, because those are the staffing. When someone calls out sick, we have to fill that position. If I call out sick, we don't have to fill my position. Mm-hmm. But if it's public safety, we have to fill it and we have to pay overtime. Mm-hmm. And so, when there's positions that are vacant, there's less people to fill those positions, calling in overtime. So that's part of the issues that we had in the last year. I think that we certainly could add more to the overtime budget, but I thought a 9% increase is a good start, and we'll continue to try to manage it going forward.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, there seems to be a significant increase in the debt level, and I'm wondering why that came about over last year.
Yeah, so
trying to understand that.
Our debt service budget, which is on that page, and it went from 6,015,000 to 6.2 million. A large part of that increase is that we are going short-term for projects that we were thinking that would have been borrowed already long-term. The projects that were approved in 2020, 2019, 2020, or the last few years, those projects, we do short-term and then we go out in a package and with a long-term bond. Mm-hmm. And we hadn't done that. We decided not to do that because the rates are so high right now. Okay. And so we'll go short-term again, so that's going to increase the borrowing costs next year more than we had anticipated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I definitely want to thank you for creating a budget that is consistent with Prop 2.5. I think it's important for everyone to remember that an override is not guaranteed, and that taking a look at both budgets right from the start is a very wise thing to do. So thank you for creating both the town manager's proposed budget as well as a Prop 2.5 compliant budget. I would also like to comment that I think that, I believe you said that using money for OPEB does not reduce from level services. It is a way of stealing from the future to pay for now. So I understand why you're doing it. I understand that desperate times call for desperate measures. And with $11 million shortfall, I would be very careful about relying on that in future years. I understand doing it for a year or two, but please don't consider it reducing from level services. It's something that you're taking away so that you can use that money immediately. Thirdly, I would say this budget with a 10% growth is not something that I'm going to be able to recommend. The last override that passed increased taxes by 7%. We're on a path for 10%, even as high as 14%, when you remember that we have a single tax bill that comes to the taxpayers of Acton. I do not believe that this is the time to be expanding capital. I do not believe that this is the time to be asking for a 10% increase in taxation on the municipal side. And I quite honestly cannot see a path to supporting a 10% increase on the municipal side. And lastly, we did just receive this on Saturday, and I definitely look forward to the budget workshops in early January. But for the select board members, you should definitely applaud your town manager for doing what you asked him to do. But under no circumstances am I going to support a 10% increase year over year for municipal budgets. Thank you.
Hey, we got to hear from everybody. That's great. Step back and there might be questions.
It's Terry again. Back when I was a select board, one of the things that I asked for was an FTE per population, so per 100 or 1,000 population. You might want to look at that again. I also asked for attrition rates, so you can understand how much would that add if you didn't hire the vacant positions. I'd also suggest that there's already a group of people volunteering to do the Citizens Library, to run it for free. And so I urge you to consider that. Thank you. Oh, and I also know that there's well, I don't know, but there's a group of people talking about pulling out the Hayward light and having a separate vote for that. It wasn't in your proposed goals, but it somehow made its way into the sidewalk or improvements or something like that. So that's another $1.5 million you could take out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mike Gowing, 93 Harris Street. Applaud you all for doing this. This is the hard work of being in this position. And I appreciate what we've got before us and what we have to do about it. I did have some questions that I was hoping I could get answers to. On the fuel that we have, whether it's replacement fuel pumps or not, are we buying only on the spot market, or are we in a contract for diesel and gas?
We have a competitively bid contract. They deliver, 10,000 gallon or 8,000 gallon tanker comes and fills it up based on a bid price.
But that's a contracted amount, so we know what our fuel costs are going to be for a fixed period of time.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. The overlay, I think we've got set up for 700 grand, and it usually ends up returning at the end of the year. Sure, I would say reduce the overlay by $200,000. That help you, and I'm assuming worst case scenario. Obviously, I hope that you guys can get an override through, and it will help out everybody. Lift all boats, as they say. But if not, then we have to realize what the impacts are going to be and where we want to spend the money. I also wanted to ask about I was a little confused on the ladder truck thing because we had two very different periods there. So I'd like to get a clarification on what the useful life is. I also was surprised that it takes 3 years to build one. This isn't a bullet train. This is a fire truck, and they've been building them for a long time. So, thank you. And last was, have we engaged the unions on discussion for plan redesign on health insurance?
Yeah, so With regards to the fire truck, I like to try to get 20 years out of it. I think the fire chief would want it to be replaced in 15, which is consistent with NFPA standards. And so I think where we're at is in between that with the proposal before the board. With regard to the unions, yes, that's starting tomorrow.
Okay.
That process is starting tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Don't forget Chapter 69. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the part we agreed that we're going to have. Okay, so FinCom is going to slowly fade. You could choose to close your meeting if you want to, or you could just hang out here and be a meeting, whatever you want.
I would love to close the meeting, however, I would love a head count of who can be there for a January 10th budget workshop. That's Wednesday, it's the day before.
I'll have to be remote.
I presume that's acceptable. Okay, thank you. Okay, can I please have a motion?
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, guys have it.
Thanks, guys. It's great to have you here. This is the kind of year where we're going to be seeing a lot of each other, and getting used to working together is good. So the reason I wanted to talk about ALG next is the budget presentation is a natural lead-in to that. Let's see, I think I'm going to do a little bit of the overview. I'm going to rely on either John or David, whoever's, feeling ready, to remind us some more details of the actual numbers and percentages that have been tossed back and forth at the ALG. But I did want to bring people up to date on the last ALG meeting and the last few ALG meetings. And I want to specifically get feedback from you all, because we've clarified that we're in a very difficult position in terms of finding an agreement between the Finance Committee and the School Committee and the Select Board. And it's going to require that David and I represent you accurately enough so that if we do come to a solution, when we do come to an agreement, we can have some confidence that we can come back and get your support for it. So, as we go through this, there may be some specific questions we have for you, but we're also very happy to hear any general comments you have. The other thing I want to make sure to cover tonight is any comments people have on the board on the reductions needed to meet a 3% budget target. That's on page 16 of the document that is in your packet, in case you wanted a chance to look at it before I ask you about it. And then later on, not at this meeting, but soon, we'll also have a review of the capital plan. There may be compelling comments about the capital plan that people want to make tonight, and that's okay. But we're not going to have a formal kind of, making sure we have a sense of the board until early January. So the ALG process. So as a reminder, the Acton Leadership Group, consisting of the Select Board and the Finance Committee and the School Committee and the staff, are not a decision-making body. They're a body that's attempting to find an agreement between those three bodies about revenue. We look at expenses because we know we need eventually to have a balanced budget where revenue is equal to expenses. But our job as ALG is to look at the revenue side. So what we're coming into that with is we've seen this level services budget from John now with this 10% increase. We've seen a similar budget from the schools, but with a larger increase. And what was new this morning, was that we got to hear from the Finance Committee about their discussions about how much of an override they think would be able to be passed and or would be prudent. There was sort of a mix in their analysis. Some of their analysis was based on looking at the various parts of the budgets and making their determination about what things were, absolutely necessary and which things were, could be put off, or which things wouldn't be appropriate to pay for with an override. And it was also their attempts to have a political judgment about how much of an override would be acceptable to our residents, to a majority, hopefully a big majority of our residents who show up at the ballot box. This would be a vote at the regular spring election time. And the FinCom max thought for an amount of override is in the range of $4 million, with the potential of adding additional money if we all agreed to it, but that would be for not to be used in the budget this year, but to be used in budgets in future years. That's so far below what the school committee and the staff have described as needing to avoid surprisingly massive layoffs in the schools, that we don't have an easy way forward. I will admit that I tossed out an idea that I know has no support on this board, but it seemed important to open up the conversation, which was as a way of narrowing the gap between the FinCom's expressed limits and the school committee's expressed needs. I expressed the idea of only having an override this year for the schools. And then saying at the same time, the town is definitely going to need an override. We can't keep up with what we're doing now at a 3% level. And to tell people, well, we'll come back in a year for another override. I think that doesn't meet the, select board's expressed opinions about, how they want to include the town as well as the schools in this initial override. The other idea that's come up that you might have a reaction to, either operationally or politically, is the notion of is another way of doing two overrides to reduce the year-by-year impact, which would be to have an override this year that would include, primarily schools, but some town, and then tell people that, yeah, we will need to come back in a year or two for an additional override. This is, for example, what happened in 2004 and 2006. There were two operational overrides, one a little bit less than 4 million, two, they were both a little bit below 4 million, as I recall. Oh, I've got a cheat sheet to remind me. $3 million override passed in 2004, $3.8 million override passed in 2006, at a time when inflation was coming in. So we're in a similar situation with, the high inflation, but also all these huge health insurance increases. I think that's the general way the conversation has gone. And I'd love to, if David, since David had prepared a really helpful proposal after his analysis of what kind of dollars and percentages might make sense for the town and schools, and maybe you could recall that and recall what the FinCom said and what the school said?
Sure, thank you. So just to put two things on it. The numbers that the Finance Committee proposed were as an $8 million override using $4 million the first year. And then they had recommendations for future years, but future years are really up to the ALG and boards in future years. And anybody who wants to, the presentation that Jim referred to is on the ALG, the Finance Committee meeting from last Tuesday, which is on ActonTV. And so if you're interested in their rationale and their analysis, you can watch that meeting. The school folks are very concerned, because even though that the school committee's recommendation was, the finance committee's recommendation was heavily biased towards or balanced towards the schools, that still the schools did not get enough money to prevent significant damage to the schools. Specifically, many sections of classes would have to be closed, and the students would have to be moved around between sections and maybe even moved around between schools. One of the things that I specifically proposed was something that the shorthand for it is one and done, and that's just to have an override, which is in fact not too much different than the one the Finance Committee proposed, but use it all in the first year and not have any headroom in the levy limit for future years. So basically what it's called, or what some people, including me, have been calling a one and done. That would involve, instead of an $8 million override, would maybe be a $9 million, maybe a bit more, $9.5 million override, but use it in the first year. And that would prevent significant damage to the schools and allow for a fair allocation to town priorities as well. But in that thing, neither entity would get their full level service budget. So both would be reduced from their level service requests, but in both cases, it would be not a set of damaging cuts.
Thank you, David. John, you were there this morning too. Is there anything else you'd want to add to our understanding of what happened or the kind of questions we're facing?
I think that the discussion this morning was, we're a little bit, it's difficult because the budget, the budget hadn't been presented yet until just now, and the school's budget isn't going to be presented until after the new year. And so I think a lot of discussion is what people think there's an appetite for, but until now, we didn't really know what's actually needed. And so I think we're getting closer, though, and I think the next ALG meeting is scheduled for January 8th. And although there'll be no new budget production of any new documents between now and then, I do think that that'll give folks time to think more about it, and maybe there's input from the board that we'll hear tonight that will help further discussions.
Great. David?
I just wanted to say that, traditionally ALG has met once a month, and we've been meeting mostly twice a month because there's so much to discuss this year.
So I think I'm ready for feedback from the board, and just to remind you, you might have comments about the reductions that we would need to meet a 3% budget target, which is where we would be if an override didn't pass. The comments on that are also helpful even for the scenario in which an override passes, and I agree with David's judgment that whatever agreement we reach, it's unlikely to be the full level services budget amount as laid out by John. So understanding what cuts, the priority of the cuts that we want to make is important. The other thing is related to that is whether you have any thoughts, intuitions, experience, analysis that would help us understand whether it's better to go for a single large override or to have two overrides, a year or two apart, or whether it's better to have what's called there's a hybrid in there, which is called a menu override, where you say to voters, well, shall we increase over the levy limit by 0 or 4 million or 8 million? Pick one. Or any other variant that, occurs to you that we should be considering at the ALG. And also, any thought you have about, so when last time we talked about the balance between the schools and the town, we said, well, we want to make sure that the town doesn't, take another big permanent hit in order just to keep the schools at the level that we want to keep the schools at. At the same time, there may need to be a short-term move in that direction. That's the direction of the conversation at ALG, that the town is in challenging shape. You've seen these reductions, they're not pleasant ones, but we would describe the schools as somewhat more on fire, that each $1 million below the budget they're looking at. You could think of that roughly, rule of thumb, as another 10 FTEs laid off, with the resulting, rearrangement of classrooms, including, reassigning people from school to school. So any thoughts that people have on any of those topics or any questions they have would be more than welcome. Dean.
So I guess the first question I've got is it possible to have two separate overrides on the same ballot, one for the benefit of the schools, one for the benefit of the town, if that is technically possible?
Yes, that's entirely legal.
I think that I would favor that approach. There's certainly we've been getting some prepackaged emails from folks advocating for the schools, and we haven't seen much yet from people advocating for the town, but we haven't been putting out the red flag as much as the schools have, I suspect. I would favor two overrides and let the folks decide. There is a smaller and smaller percentage of households in Acton that have kids in schools. I think there's a lot of folks that don't have kids in school, and some that do are a little skeptical about some of the practices of the school department. And voting for municipal services provides a service that benefits everyone. Voting for the schools provides certainly a very important service, but to a much smaller portion of the population. So I would certainly favor that. If we were going to go to one unified override, the only way you could possibly get my support for that would be if we decided right up front on a split between the town and the schools that would reflect the typical operation, which is basically 1/3, 2/3, to benefit the two entities. But I think this is a significant situation where all the taxpayers have to have a chance to vote and say which services they think are most important.
Thanks, Dean. Who's next? David.
Thank you. I characterize the difference in the situation between the schools and the town as the school situation is definitely more acute, but it's no more serious than the town situation, right? And I think that we are all in this together, right? I really don't want us to get into the pointing that, support me, not them. And I think that's not the nature of this town. I think that everybody has pride in the school system. Everybody has pride in the town. And in fact, both entities are very efficient and very well run. Our town gets, our schools get educational outcomes which are ranked second in the Commonwealth for average student costs. So it's extremely efficient. And the town, our town, for sake of comparison, it was pointed out to me that that Concord's budget is 25% bigger than ours, and they have 6 or 7 million oh, sorry, 6,000 fewer people. Thank you. I really don't want to get into the finger pointing back and forth. I do completely agree, and I think this board has said before that we need a fair allocation between the town and the schools. And my one and done proposal, I was looking at, roughly 9% for increase for the town and a 12% increase for the schools, which I think covers everybody's needs proportionate to the acute nature of, the school problem and the serious nature of the town problem. I just want to actually point out for everyone about the town's issues when we talk about some of the projects that we have, right? Almost all the projects we have are either upkeep, and I define upkeep as distinct from maintenance, that's when we fix or replace something that's basically at the end of its useful life. It can be a HVAC system, which is an easy thing to find out if it's an end of its useful life, but it can also be an intersection to make more safe, or a million other possibilities. The other things are safety, whether it's safety for our firefighters, like their breathing apparatus, safety for our residents, like sidewalks, crosswalks, other kinds of things like that. And there are also things like the bridges and culverts. Everybody look around town today, I have a vernal stream in my front yard, which I have never seen more than 6 inches deep. Today it is 2 feet deep. I've lived there for decades. And so we're just a superstorm away from culverts washing out in town. We need to keep these up and maintained. It was recommended to us that we spend $800,000 a year for a decade. We could, sure, postpone that till next year and do $1 million a year for 9 years. But we can't do that forever, right? And this is the time to kind of, we've been postponing that in Prop 2.5 budgets for a lot, and that's just one example. The things that are in the capital budget or projects budget are the highest of the highest of the highest priorities, right? The town manager filters them, we filter them, and finally we see what fits. So I just want to say that I think we definitely need a fair allocation for both entities. And finally, I don't think it should be split into 2 overrides, either on the same ballot or in subsequent ballots. In subsequent ballots, I think the one that goes second is at a distinct disadvantage, and that's not fair to everyone, and it's against the we're all in this together approach that I would like to have. And if they're on the same ballot, I just think it's confusing for people, and it doesn't solve anything if, a minority vote for each one, right? So anyway, I think we should have a single override, and then, we decide on the magnitude of it together, during in the ALG consensus process that we have, and move forward with that request to the town voters.
Thanks, David. Fran, Alyssa?
Thanks. I also think that we need to approach this with the attitude that we're all in this together and not separate out on the ballot the schools from the town. Yes, there's a higher percentage of people living in town without children in the schools. And yet that was the case for those people if they were here when their children were in the schools, right? There were folks whose kids had already gone through the schools who were subsidizing their children's education. There are so many people who move to Acton not because they have children that they want to put in the schools, but for all of the amenities that they benefit from because we have excellent schools. The school excellence is tied to property value. Just, in the last couple of years in my neighborhood, there have been houses for sale, and the people that are moving in are downsizing. Their kids have grown and flown, or they don't have kids at all, or they're single and elderly. So people have an idea that everybody comes here for the schools, but it's just not true. There's a lot of people who come because the schools are excellent, their property values are high, they have access to great services, because a community that values education and spends the money on that also has a lot of other amenities like great parks and great libraries and other services that we all rely on. And I'm also not sure that we can use that budgetary split of, 65% of the budget or 68% of the budget goes to the town and the other goes to the schools, and the remainder goes to the town in order to address the shortfalls. I think, like David said, we need to allocate it fairly to meet the needs that each entity is facing, rather than focus on that split. And it's, similar to the ARPA funding, the allocation was not, let's give the schools, 65% of the 7 million that we got. We looked at what the needs were for both entities and then decided on that allocation. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is I like the idea of one and done, rip the Band-Aid off, but I'm also very concerned about the impact on residents, taxpayers. It seems that intuitively, I think people are going to have an easier time with if we're, increasing 9%, doing 3 or 4% a year rather than in a single year.
Thank you. Thanks. I just want to make sure to hear from everybody, David, before we get a second dip on there. But do you have any thoughts, Fran, before we do a second round?
Brief, but I am also in the camp of the one and done, and that we're all in it together. I would really think that having two separate ballot questions for the school and the town wouldn't be great. And I look forward to hearing this conversation, more about this conversation.
Okay. Maybe I should share, are you responding, or do you want to? Great, please.
So I just wanted to address Alyssa's point about trying to apportion it out for a few years. And, that's exactly the way I started, right? And my first playing with numbers was to apportion it out over a number of years. But the thing that changed my mind was, and these numbers are, what I'm about to say is mine, but they're approximately correct. With a 3% budget increase, that is no override, the school district would probably have to lay off about 100 staff. And that means reallocating lots of classrooms, and class sizes would be among the largest in the state. If we just split that in two, which is about what the FinCom proposal does, we'd have to lay off 50 staff, right? And that's almost as damaging as laying off 100 staff, right? That would have a permanent negative impact to the schools. And I think the only way to do that is the one and done. And I completely appreciate that it would be better not to impact everybody in 1 year. I agree with that. I just have a hard time seeing how we can do that without damaging the schools. We could postpone the culvert project by a year, but the schools don't have that option.
Just some thoughts. In terms of the budget cuts that you proposed, John, I thought, you didn't say that they were in order, but I saw them that way, and it made sense to me that capital was first, and then, changes to programs, and then, and then the changes to staffing levels. Of the capital changes that we need to make, I know we'll have a longer conversation about this another time, but I think there probably are a couple of, at least one or two of the high priority items that we could delay without too much pain. So we'll get into that, but I think that's doable, and it's a good way of thinking about, saving some money. One of the reasons I keep coming back to trying to figure out how to do this in two parts, like maybe a small combined school and town override, and then another one in a year or two, is that what I keep hearing from people that I've been asking about, who actually were here 20 years ago and aware of things. I was here 20 years ago, but I was not aware of the political process here. Is that it takes a while to do a successful override campaign. That without a lot of education, without a lot of outreach, without meeting specifically with lots of groups, you encounter a basic level of, both skepticism and pain levels around taxes. And it takes a while to, communicate to enough people about the importance of an override. It takes a while. So I'm thinking, this first one might fail, and I would like a plan for how to deal with that. And I'd rather have a plan that has a better chance of passing than a plan that, won't pass or has a higher chance of failing. So that's the calculus I'm doing. So that's where I'm a little, that's what's driving some of my confusions about and ideas about how to structure this. But I appreciate hearing from everyone. Are there a second round of comments, like you heard from people and wanted to say something in response, or anything like that? Alyssa?
Just to follow up on what you just said, Jim, I think that the possibility of an override not passing is something that we all need to take very, very seriously, but the reasoning behind proposing a lower number to increase the likelihood that it will pass because we don't have as many months as we would like to doesn't sit right with me, because if we need to socialize this and convince people of the dire need, then that couple of percentage points of increases is not going to be what makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I explained that clearly enough, but if you come and say 6% is more likely to pass, so let's not propose 9%. If you have to do all of the work to convince people to pass the override, you might as well, I don't think that the 3 percentage points, and I'm just pulling these numbers out, they're not real, is going to be the key element in whether it passes or doesn't pass.
Yeah, we've talked about two kinds of sort of psychological barriers in the override. One is whether the amount of the dollars has more digits. So passing that $10 million amount has been something that most people in the ALG have been reluctant to do, although understanding that, if you're really trying to keep the schools and towns at their level services budget, it's more than 10 million. And the other one was the sort of the amount of the projected increase in the tax bill. And if you get to that, what was the magic? They were talking, FinCom was talking about some magic level of increase that they thought would be, create a particular reaction among people.
I think they were trying to keep the increase of the average tax bill less than $1,000.
Right. which is, roughly 10%.
No, it's
No.
less than that.
Okay.
It's 5% or $5 million
Oh, right.
or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
right. I live in a small house, I forgot. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. David?
Also with, talking about possibly, or what's necessary to discuss with the people in town, before they vote on the override, long-term, the Finance Committee's proposal of $8 million over several years, that you would use over several years, is not much different for taxpayers than $9.5 million in 1 year, right? And I understand it's different, it is more, and I understand, but I come back to the damage that we're doing immediately to the schools and over time to the town. And that's also, when I say one and done, I would propose not to give us any levy limit headroom. What we have done in the past is raise the levy limit and not use it all, and then we could increase taxes by more than 2.5% in future years. I would keep the levy limit increase to just what we need as kind of a good faith effort with the electorate that says we're just asking for what we need to stay out of trouble and not anymore. And so the one and done to me applies not only to being able to remove, not damage things this year, but also to saying, we go back to normal increases next year.
Yeah, thank you. Alyssa?
So I want to clarify that I personally support that approach. I just want to be mindful of the need to clearly communicate that with voters. And you had also asked us to look at the cuts that need to be made and how we would prioritize that. I am not prioritizing this because it's 2.8 million and this adds up to 2.8 million. So I don't think that there's any prioritization that we can do that would have any meaning because this is what it would take to get to a 3% budget. Unless we wanted to say, propose an alternative, like, instead of reducing ambulance and transportation, how about this other change? So this is what it is.
Yeah, the other place it becomes relevant is if, as I predict, that we end up, even with the override, not getting to the full level services level. So we would need some cuts. But we will continue to talk about that. Of course.
So one other thing that I wanted to say is that we talk about damage that will be done to the schools, and I want to be clear that everybody keep in mind there has already been damage done. The pandemic did a lot of damage with remote learning, and kids are still catching up from that impact. And there were 2 years in a row of significant staff cuts. And I can't remember for sure what the total FTE, but I think it was 34 or so. So there's already a very big negative impact being felt in the schools. So to not pass an override would be adding on top of that.
Thanks. For those of you that are out in the audience, because we're not making a specific decision, I'm not going to be entertaining comments at this point in time, but we still desperately want to hear from you. So please, write us, call us, talk to us. We want to hear what you're thinking. Thank you. So more money stuff, because, this is the theme for this time of year. So David is going to now we're going to talk about the CPA, prioritizing the Community Preservation Act funding applications, particularly in fact, only the town-sponsored items. And Dean will explain why that is in a moment. And David's, look at it, David's just about putting up the list of look, there they are, projects. They even fit all on a page, or is there a little bit on a second page?
There is some on the second page, I think.
Okay.
Actually, hold on. Yeah, just two.
Okay, okay.
So really just this.
Right, and CPA admin
report.
support and debt service, which I'm willing to ignore because there's very little we can do about those. So just so we know where the endpoint is here, start looking at those if you haven't already, and think about your priority order to the extent that you can come up with one. Maybe you have just one, two, or three that seem really important to you, of the blue ones, because those are the town projects. Maybe you have a sense of all of them in order. I'm going to be writing down the numbers in the order that you tell me them. And then Dean and I are going to take those and turn them into a score that he can take to the CPC and say, hey, they rated this one really high, or they rated this one really low, so that they have some information from us about the ratings. Dean, why don't you take it over, give us some background, and if you think any of these require extra explanation, feel free, but I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining them because they're documented online.
Okay, thank you. So the way this whole process started was over 10 years ago, when the select board at that time, or at least a couple of members, expressed their dismay that there were town projects that were being proposed to CPC, which the select board was not aware of, which individual members of the select board might not have been in favor of. And so they brought in this policy where they asked the select board to weigh in on all of these before CPC gets too far down in the deliberations. And CPC has always benefited from the thoughts from the select board. Due to a problem with agenda posting, CPC did not have their meeting on the 12th. Our first meeting to start going through these and hearing the presentation is actually going to be tomorrow night. So that's sort of as background. The other couple of items which you've certainly heard from me ad infinitum is we've got about $3.5 million worth of requests here. We've got about $1.5 million to spend. If you approved all of the town projects, or you can pick out 2 or 3 town projects where you come up with $1.2, $1.3 million, and that's just not going to happen. There are some private projects, private nonprofit that have certainly got some backing behind them. So theoretically, the board could decide, ask the town manager to withdraw some of these applications and just give the CPC a little bit less to work with, or we could just get the prioritization and we can relay that as to see which ones of these projects you folks feel are the most important, but at least you'll have your opportunity to weigh in on it. I know Jim is going to be doing the numbers, and I'm going to be scratching down any comments that folks make so that I can share them with the CPC in our subsequent meetings.
Thanks, Dean. It could be that before you're able to feel like you could, say, I don't know, number 4 is the first important one to me, followed by 13 and 15. Those are not real numbers, I'm just making them up. It could be that you have questions that you need answered before you could, spit out a bunch of numbers in order. So happy to entertain questions. I won't answer any of them, but maybe Dean can, or maybe the manager can. No questions about what these things mean? Okay, great. So does anybody happen to have an ordered list already in their head and I can just write down numbers? David?
I have an ordered list on my phone because my screen is busy.
Okay.
Does that count?
That's
So,
fine.
My first one is number 17, which is just the admin support, which I think we should do. My second one is number 13, the RHSO. I think that's that we're a member of that is an important thing. The next is number 1, the River Street Park, and I think that's important because we've started that project. We should complete that project. Next one is number 15, which is the open space set aside. I will, because I think, our purchase of open space is very, very important. I would say that, in my opinion, the number could be less here than the number has only been this high in the past once. And I think it would not inhibit any preservation of open space if this was reduced in order to make room for some of the smaller projects. So I put our open space there, but I think the amount could be reduced. The next one I would put up is the cemetery iron gates, and I think that's important to do sooner rather than later so that it's complete by the time the 250th celebrations get started, and I think that would be nice if that looked nice. The next one I would do is number 2, the Acton Community Dog Park. Again, because that project is started, I think, we want to be able to fund it enough to complete it. The next one is number 14, the ACHC community housing, and I just think that's an important program that we've, the affordable housing we've always funded there, and they're able to help a number of projects along. The next 2 are 3 and 4, the shade structures. I think those are quite important. I've been in both of those places on hot days in the summer, and the shade, I think, is very important. The last 2, the number 10, the town hall gutter restoration and painting. I think that's a very important project, but it's very large, and it would squeeze out other things. And I think maybe this is not the year for that. And finally, registering Woodlawn Cemetery on as a national on the Register of Historic Places. I think that excuse me. I think that's a fine thing. It's just that it's not as high a priority for me as the things that are higher in my list. Thank you.
Thanks. If people don't want to rank them all, they can rank whichever ones they feel the most important about. We'll have a scoring system that takes that into account. Anybody else want to talk about numbers? Alyssa?
I rank open space very high, but I agree with David that it doesn't necessarily need to be the amount asked. But actually, just strike that comment because that's up to the CPC. I have full support of the 2 Woodlawn proposals.
It'll help me if you can say numbers.
7 and 6.
Okay.
So number 15 for open space.
Yep.
7 and 6 for the Woodlawn gates and also for the application for National Registry. I also fully support the shade structures, although they're very small amounts. So that was one of the reasons that I put them high, in addition to the dire need for shade at those parks. But Jones, there is no alternative, and according to the application, the ones at Nara Park for number 4, they're currently renting, so that could continue for another year, but they're tiny amounts. I agree that RHSO needs to be funded. I actually feel very strongly that that needs to be a line item in the budget because the monitoring and the lottery that RHSO helps to maintain our subsidized housing inventory. It's a requirement by the state, and I don't see a requirement for the town as fitting in with the mission of the Community Preservation Act. But given the budget challenges, I don't think it's gonna go into the budget this year. But just wanna keep mentioning that. Also, the dog park, number 2, and River Street, number 1. And ACHC, definitely, community housing is a high priority. I do know that for the last couple of years, when they've presented to the CPC, there haven't been anticipated projects that they need to fund, and I believe that their current set-aside balance is about 300,000, so that's a lower priority for those reasons for me this year. And because you suggested it, Jim, I would suggest removing the gutter application and the repainting for this year. I understand the reasoning that we want to have everything in tip-top shape for the 250th, but when I walk around and drive by Town Hall, I think it looks spectacular. I don't see a lot of peeling paint, and I think there was only one photograph of some damage that was in the application, as opposed to some of the other town projects, like the library repointing and the Windsor Ave building last year. I mean, there were tons of photographs, and also even the Red House, there was a lot more structural damage. So I think that that just needs to be brought back another year. And it might help them to remove such a large ask. That was number 10.
Thanks. Fran, you got a sense of some numbers?
Completely opposite of Alyssa.
Okay.
My first.
That's why there's 5 of us.
Number 10 is on my top list. Even if maybe breaking it down into 2 separate years, like gutters are important. I think that maybe repainting in another year could be a possibility. My second one is number 6, the National Register of Historic Places application for Woodlawn. This has been in the works for a really long time, and I think hiring a consultant to do the work, which this is what this amount is for, would just help put this to bed, and it would be done. 7 is my next, the Woodlawn Cemetery Iron Gates. That needs really no explanation. My next is Acton Community Dog Park.
Thank you.
2, sorry. Next on my list is the ACHC, Community Housing Program Fund. I know they need to replenish their coffers. They've been, helping the AHA project on Main Street. And then my next and last is 13.
Great.
The RHSO. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Dean, do you get to double dip? Do you get to have an opinion now and then take it to CPC as well? I mean, I don't see why not, but I just thought I'd just make sure you're okay with that.
I will give it a try.
Okay.
So I think my first priority, similar to David, is the admin support. And the second would be the RHSO.
And again, if you can say, or David will whisper the numbers in me, but if you happen to know them, that's helpful.
Yeah, 13. Then it would be item 15, the open space. The next would be number 2, which is the dog park. The Jones Playground, number 3. Item 3 would be the next in my priority. And then I would be to item number 1, which is River Street.
Great, thank you. Mine went down like this. the housing ones, RHSO and, there's a couple housings.
ACH.
Yeah, I write down, what was 14? Is there anything called 14? What's that? Is that on-
14 is the ACHG, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, okay, yeah. Okay, and then 15, and 2, which is the Acton Community Dog Park, because I feel like, we're in the middle of it. Let's finish it off. 6, the Register of Historic Places seems like it sets up a lot of future possibilities, so let's get that done, followed by the Woodlawn Cemetery Iron Gates. Then number 10, the Town Hall gutter restoration and repainting. Well, we're getting near the end of my list, so I understand the thoughts of other people of either breaking it down or removing it, or this one does seem to be falling in a lot of our minds into not getting fully funded in the first year, if at all. Then I had River Street Park Phase 2 completion, which I think is really important, but I think it could be delayed or broken down. 3, the 3 and 4, the 2 shade structures, Jones first, and then I wrote the admin support, but I think both the admin support and there's 2 on the next page that were like. Yeah, it didn't seem like we would be able to not do those. So some people mentioned them, some people didn't. I'm not going to try to calculate a score for those 2 things. Thanks. I will, I'll get with Dean and see, we'll add up the numbers shortly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
I was just wondering if in your memo of motions voted on, you could just include the results.
That makes perfect sense, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else you want from us, Dean, on this topic?
No, I think if we can get that document together tomorrow, it'd be great. But,
Yep,
we're
that's
just
my goal.
starting this, so certainly it can wait until we can talk about the next CPC meeting, which will be in January.
It should be done either later tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. I can never sleep after these meetings, so. Well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's one hand raised.
Oh, great. We didn't quite make a decision, but we did talk about things, so I would be willing to entertain a comment on this. Matt, who's out there in audience land who wants to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Claire Siska?
Great.
I apologize if I said your name wrong, but you should be able to speak now.
Hi, sorry, thank you. I'm just a quick comment on behalf of the Dog Park Committee. I want to thank you for your comments. We've been working to build the dog park since 2017. The dog park was on the Select Board's top 10 goals this year, and it was mentioned in the budget presentation by Mr. Mangiarotti. Our design has been finalized. We've received our Stanton grants. The Friends of Acton Community Dog Park continue to raise funds, but since 2017, that's a lot of years of inflation, and there have also been, supply chain issues, so costs have really gone up, and there have been some unanticipated expenses, such as the stormwater management system. Acton's dog owners have been very patient and supportive through the process. We're so close, and with the CPA funds, we can build the park this coming summer. So we want to thank you for your past support and ask that you put in some support towards the CPC of fully supporting our proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Good luck out there.
Thank you.
Okay. On to the next topic. Okay. Oh, yeah, this one. This one we tried to do 2 times already, but it's only 9:30. We're actually going to be able to finish this one. This is the Citizens Library Governance Advisory Committee charge. So this has been in our packet 3 times. We've had some discussion, but let me sort of bring up a few points to sort of set some groundwork for this. The charge proposes 2 phases. a phase that would be focused on a pragmatic, short-term working relationship document about how the libraries and the select board and staff work together. There were some comments and questions about whether this was best described as an MOA or an MOU for a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding. So maybe, John, you write these things from time to time and sign them. What is the difference between an MOA and an MOU? And do you have an opinion about which makes more sense for this kind of?
There is not a material difference from a legal standpoint, but there is, I believe, a difference from a communication standpoint and what you want this document to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really depends on the parties and what they're more comfortable with, because I think you can use them interchangeably.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. The notion of this first phase with this memorandum as an output is a short-term bridge, a way of memorializing how things are working together and should work together. There's a lot of these things that have already been settled in the practice, as this is just a matter of writing them down. There are some things in that initial big matrix that we had the board review and both library trustees review that haven't really had to be questioned or addressed yet. So there's some work that seems like this would be relatively easy, some work that would require, real conversation, real negotiation. This is not, the body that would be coming up with recommendations would not be a decision-making body. This is a body that, like the ALG, is intended to come back to the respective boards to say, here's what we come up with, and they're expected to come back with something that they think will meet the majority approval of all the boards. To do that, they might reasonably need to come back from, one or more times to talk to us or talk to the other boards about, hey, we're beginning to talk about this in this direction. Are you okay with that? So that's phase one. We're hoping that can get done as soon as it can be done. 2 months maybe, depends. Then it goes on to the more complex topic of phase two, which is how do you take this, now we have this general sense of, how these things, how the boards are working together. How do you represent that in a more permanent way? Is it a change to bylaws? Is it a change to charters? Is it a change to legislation? There's a lot of different ways of thinking about how this would be done. So that's a more technical project that we think will take a little longer. But again, the notion is to come up with a strategy that is acceptable to the majority of the boards, majority of each board, so that then, staff and town council can get to work on, creating this stuff. And depending on what stuff it is, it might be a town meeting vote, it might be some legislative process, it might be various trustees or the select board having to agree to things. So a lot depends on what strategy they come up with. And I think the other questions that came up was who should be on this advisory committee. There were a lot of questions raised about the oddity of having all 3 Citizens Library trustees on there. That was just a practical recommendation from Melissa and I based on that that would avoid, if you have 2 people, that's a quorum of the Citizens Library trustees. And if you're trying to come up with a system that's going to reach the okay of a majority of the board, it's just going to be a lot more efficient for all of them to be there so that they can, look each other in the eyes and figure out, what they're thinking, if they need to go back to their regular meetings and take votes on things, that's fine. That's part of the whole process. We don't need unanimity here. We just need a majority of each board. Of course, the stronger the agreement is, the better the agreement will be. But there are some contentious issues in there that we wouldn't be surprised if there was not unanimity about. let's see, in addition to the 3 CL members, there was two folks on, I'm going to look at Alyssa now, and she's going to remind me who it is. 2 folks from Memorial Library, and who else? This one, a director, library director, John Mangiarotti or a designee. In late-breaking news, we also thought having an outside person who was very familiar with the libraries might be a good idea, and in particular, we thought of the Friends of the Acton Libraries, who work with all the libraries. And the chair is fine with providing a person, and Pat Clifford, who is on the Friends of the Acton Libraries, has volunteered to be that person. So we do have an extra person that we think would make sense to add to this committee. So that's the basics. Did we cover the stuff I wanted to cover that we talked about? Okay, good. So now it'd be great to hear feedback from people, and I'm particularly interested in hearing from David because we've had to interrupt you or ask you to shorten your comments, and maybe having heard this and having thought about it, you can, let us know what you think or ask questions or create a dialogue here.
Thank you. I have a number of things that, I'd like to discuss, and some of them relate to things that you've already mentioned. The first is the order of the 2 phases, right? And I think a majority of people who spoke last time, we heard from people favored swapping the order. I favor swapping the order as well, or having this charge just declare that it's a branch and drop the second phase. I mean, I'm completely fine with the first phase. The problem I have with the order that it's in is not knowing what the library is. I mean, if we can't even agree what the library is, how can we possibly agree to how the interaction is going to work, right? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's what's sometimes called in the corporate world a commitment to nonsense. So I don't understand how that could work. And in addition, some people have said that we could hire a library manager on that. That would be, I think, irresponsible on our part to hire a library manager again for an entity that we didn't know what the entity was, and it wouldn't be fair to the person being hired to say, we don't know what this library is, but we'd like to hire you to run it. I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to stop after each point and discuss them, or whether you want me to go through all of them. I think it might make sense to stop rather than, but I defer to how you want to.
Thanks. You know your list better, and if your intuition is that it's good to stop at each point, let's go with that. So there's a bunch of ways we could proceed. One would be, for example, to give this advisory group the task of doing these 2 tasks, but not tell them what order to do it in, and let them figure it out. That might deal with the concern of, you have to get all the way through this phase before you get to that phase. Because there probably is going to be some back and forth. You have to sort of, as you're saying, you sort of have to know where you're headed to, to sort of fill in the gaps. There might be other thoughts. So, but here, it's a dialogue. Let's go for it.
So I'm completely amenable to that if we don't take any action after the first step is done, right? That is completely fine with me. I mean, to me, it has to be a branch. We've declared that it's a branch, right? It's on the Minuteman system because it's a branch. We apportion state aid to that library because it's a branch. Books are processed in the main library for that library because it's a branch, right? To me, it has to be a branch. And so, but I'm happy to give this committee both phases, and as long as we're not doing something like hiring a library manager until it's done, I'm completely fine with that.
Okay. Alyssa?
I would just like to add, in my opinion, a correction to the statement that the board decided it was a branch. What I heard this board before I joined was that it would operate as a branch in order to clarify how folks were behaving, interacting, what their duties and responsibilities is. I do not believe that this board has the ability to determine whether or not it's a branch. And I guess my question for you, David, is when you say decide what the library is, what exactly does that mean? Do you mean whether it's a branch or not?
Well, basically, yes. I mean, there are people who are saying that it should be a completely independent library, which I don't see how that works, right? It's operated as a branch for 90 years, right? You can go back to the 1930s and find that the books were processed for the West and South Acton branches of the library at that time. It was before the town acquired it. It was operated as a branch. And if we want to say that it's not, what is it? And that's why I want the order reversed or at the same time, right? Because it started off originally in 1890 as a subscription library. Are we returning it to be a subscription library? I assume not, but people have different opinions as to this. And if we can't agree what it is, then I think we cannot have any understanding about how it should operate. You know, we have to, I mean, if some people would like it to be an independent library. If it's an independent library, what that means to me is we break the ties to the main library. It operates as an independent library. We agree to fund it in a particular way. Maybe it gets incorporated as a separate public library. I don't know, right? Those are all expensive things to do. But if that's what the decision is to do, we could do them. But I would like to have that decided before we agree to do something like hire a library manager or change the way we operate the library.
Okay, it's a dialogue.
Dialogue?
Go for it.
So I think that I'm most comfortable leaving the decision of whether or not a library manager is hired at, and at what point to the staff. Again, I don't think that that's our decision to make. I think that that's a decision that John and Maria need to make, depending on how they view the progress of this process. And I don't think that we can come to an agreement of everyone involved, of what the library is and how it operates without going through this process, because as you said, there's a lot of different opinions. And I think that the process needs to happen in order for all of that discussion to occur and people to come to some consensus over that, and then decide on what structural solution we want to implement based on that consensus. So I don't see these as backwards. I'm comfortable having two tasks and not specifying that it needs to be in any particular order.
I'm comfortable with that too, as long as we don't take action on them until both are done.
There might be thoughts from you guys, because it's really five of us.
So I agree that the Citizens Library has operated as a branch for many years, formally or informally. I question how we come to some closure on that discussion as to whether it's a branch or not. I'm convinced it is, and I certainly agree with David that, we should not be hiring any permanent help or a library manager until we've got that resolved. It's going to be a waste of everybody's money and time, and unfair to anyone who might apply for the job. Yes, you would think that this is a decision that should be made by the town manager and the director of libraries, but I think they would benefit from our guidance and reassurance, and that, they're not subjected to any sort of political pressure from outside groups to go ahead and hire somebody. I think that we really need to back them up and say, no, we need to get this resolved. We need an organizational structure that everybody agrees on before we start bringing in more help.
Any thoughts, Fran, on this topic?
I do have lots of thoughts, but I'll table those. I just want to support the creation of the charge and the committee and have them figure out the little citizens library. I mean, I personally view it as a branch. It's been operating as a branch under the AML for, I don't know how long. It's been staffed by librarians, some of them whom I know. So I would love to see some sort of resolution. So we can move on.
Okay, I think we've heard from enough people on the board that we have a sense of how to proceed on this one. But Dean, yeah.
Well, I might suggest that if we make a motion to approve this charge, but only include Phase 1, and then based on what comes out of Phase 1, then we can always develop a more advanced charge to see what kind of formal follow-up. That way, at least we get a start on this.
That's a little different than what I was hearing from David and Alyssa, which was to have the committee, come back with their own recommendations about what order to do things in. That enough of Phase 2 needs to be clear, about the ultimate direction here, for them to have a successful negotiation of the memorandum. So that may be a point that we have to talk more about. David?
I'm happy with that, but I'm also happy with just combining them. Just remove the phases, right? Say that the purpose of this committee is to decide the function of the Citizens Library trustees, what they're involved in, what their responsibilities are, and the status of the library. And report back to us and when they're done. Any of those is fine. For me, I just want to know what the library is before we take any action.
Alyssa?
So I have another friendly correction to that. This committee will not be deciding what the trustees' authority is. The committee is going to be deciding what structural fix we need to make in order to clarify the relationship between the two libraries, how they function and operate. So I think I heard you say, David, that the committee would be deciding what the function of the trustees is. And they're not making a decision about what the function of the trustees is. They're bringing back a recommendation of how do we codify the two boards, what their responsibility is. Are we going to combine them into one board that oversees two libraries and a two-library system? And it's not clear that the library has been operating as a branch for decades. It's clear to me from reviewing town reports, newspaper articles, meeting minutes, that they've come in and out of a working relationship with the Memorial Library over time, sometimes working closely with them and taking books from the AML, and there was once a South Acton library. Other times they had their own interlibrary system. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like Minuteman. It was an interlibrary loan system called the Carriage or Cart or something like that. So it's changed over time. And so people's recollection of like Dean was a trustee and what the trustees did during his tenure. And it changed every time there was an iteration of trustees or new staff. So we're not determining the function of the trustees or worrying about what they were doing in the past. We are focused on a couple of things: the patron experience, a good working environment for the staff, and a town that has two libraries is very attractive to library staff because they see that the town, it's a community that values libraries. So we want to focus and center the patron experience and staff's working environment first and foremost in this process.
Thanks. I think I almost have enough But I would like to hear a comment from the audience, but, ooh, cool. I don't know, maybe it was John, he was like, he looked up from his phone.
It was me.
Go for it.
I'm transitioning to phone
Okay.
to make an exit, and I'll be listening.
Okay, great.
My basement, my sump pump broke
Okay.
again, so I need to go.
Oh, man, okay. One question, as you walk out, the idea to have a memorandum and then have that be a trigger for hiring the library manager came out of a meeting with you and Maria. So I wondered if I mean, we'll wrestle with this as a board, but I wonder if you had any feedback on that notion at this point, before you go off and deal with your soggy basement.
I think what I'm looking for is direction from the board on how it wants me to help the libraries do what they do best.
Okay.
And I got that a year ago, and I haven't gotten that confirmed. If it takes an MOA, that's fine. If the board wants to vote a motion to confirm that, that would work just as well.
Great, thank you. Tara, something about this first part of the discussion.
Thank you. Also, John, I have a spare sump pump in my basement if there's not an extra one someplace.
You had a concern
No,
before
'cause
Sarah spoke?
when they go, they go.
Comments from the public after each step? I mean, we've been waiting a long time to have us have a dialogue. I would rather have comments from the public at the end of the process, just a suggestion.
Well, I think it would be unfair if you voted on anything before seeing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a vote here, but if we do get to a vote, I'll make sure there'll be comments. Do you have something in a minute or two that we can just insert right here?
Just like, I don't really like this charge. I feel like it's legally problematic, but I'm willing to do nothing until I see what a committee comes up with. I feel like there's enough agreement on the board to kick this off. I would be happy with that, but I have technical corrections because it was never staffed by AML until recently. The Citizens Library trustees always hired their own. I think they fired one too. The deed, you look at the deed, it says part of the building was used for a branch, has been used as a branch, not would in the future. I would love to separate entirely from Memorial Library, but there are people that don't want to. But I would be willing to head up a group of people that volunteer to get back in the library and run it in a warm, friendly, volunteer way to save money. Also, the only, there's enough legal ambiguity. If the town council actually felt like the Friends of Citizens Library legal memo didn't hold water, you'd think that she'd be writing a thing right away, okay? I believe that she knows that it holds water, and I believe that if you really want to declare it a branch, then go to court. Ask the court to do a CPRE or whatever it's called to make it that, and then we're all done, okay? And then spend that money. But it's not going to be an easy battle because we have a really good case. So what I'm saying is that instead of going to the court and saying, hey, stop these guys from doing all this stuff that's legally problematic, I say let's get this committee, whatever it is, started and see what they come up with. Because what if they come up with something everybody's happy with, or at least good enough with? That's where I'm at. Thanks.
Thanks. And I think you've covered a lot of topics on the whole thing, so we probably won't need another round of comments. But Miriam wants to make sure to get a chance to say something since Tara got a chance to say something. I'm willing to entertain that.
Not even quite sure what I'm going to say. Miriam Lezak, I am an AML trustee. I do not speak for the board. So I have, I've looked at this idea of creating, there are things I'm uncomfortable with. I'm not sure I like the imbalance of the number of, citizens trustees and AML trustees. I worry that, so much time and energy has been spent, excuse me, that, it's like, and I worry that, even getting this group of people together, it's going to be extremely difficult to find common ground. There are a handful of people in town who are unbelievably reluctant to change. And they are very loud, and, some of them are part of this amorphous Friends of West Acton Library that, who are they? We don't know. But I just worry that this is just going to be, more wheels spinning. I don't know what the answer is. But it's an interesting idea to try. I don't know what will happen with it.
Thank you.
I don't know if I said anything at all.
No, I appreciate the point of view. So I think from this first part, what I hear is we could potentially go off and redraft that little section about the phases to make it clear that it's not one phase and another phase, but these are tasks that need to get done. Alyssa?
So what I would like to do is hear the rest of David's concerns.
Let's move on to the next one.
And then we can, take notes and
Mhm.
edit the document
Yeah.
and bring it back for a vote next time.
Yep.
So I said the word function. The document says currently assumed responsibilities and authorities of the CLT. I used the word function instead of that. I can say assumed responsibilities and authorities instead. But that's what the first phase is supposed to do. And it's in this charge. And so the charge says, basically, in my paraphrasing, to figure out the function of the citizens trustees. And if that's not what's intended, we should say what's intended.
So that is an affirmation, which the town manager just asked for, of what this board affirmed almost a year ago, leading up to town meeting. It was in January, I think, that we need, in order to protect the working environment for the staff, we need a confirmation that it's going to be operating as a as a branch. And that's what this is. So that's why it says currently assumed responsibilities and authorities of the Citizens Library trustees. It's not making a decision on where we are once we have a structural solution in place. It's an affirmation of it's basically how everyone is going to be interacting with one another and who's responsible for what and who's not responsible for what. So, representing a shared agreement on the currently assumed responsibilities and authorities. It's not deciding what the function of the trustees is. That's what the governance structure solution is, that we're going to vote on, bring to town meeting, what have you. That depends on what that structural solution is. So is that more clear?
I appreciate the distinction. Thank you.
There's other topics, right?
Yes, so the next part is the makeup of this committee.
Yes.
I think it's not right that, first of all, that the citizens trustees are on this committee at all. I don't know of any other case where the people, this charge is to recommend what the function of the citizens trustees would be, whether it's the one that's currently in place or going forward. So the one that's currently in place, if I'm understanding Alyssa correctly, is what's phase one. How we would restructure that is phase two. In no case do the members of a board or committee, including us, decide for themselves what their responsibilities are. There are 0 cases of that. And I'm wondering why this one needs the exception. And, well, I'll think I go first, and then I have more points on that.
Yeah, so what I'm reflecting back on is my time with the Land Stewardship Committee, where we had no charter. And we spent a lot of time drafting a charter and talking with town council and talking with staff. We were clear that we couldn't decide on it, but that we were the right people to be working on it. Similarly, different committees have come to us saying, we'd like to adjust our charter. Can you do that? So that's why this is not a decision-making body, it's a recommending body. So it's going to work on this stuff and then, I agree. The Citizens Library trustees themselves as an entity are not going to be deciding what their structure is, but they're going to participate in it because they have to live with it.
Well, we have to live with what the town charter says about us. We don't get to change the town charter. Town meeting
We
does.
can propose, we can
Right, so
discuss
I
and
think
propose.
that the citizens trustees should be non-voting members of this body. I completely agree that they should provide input, right, completely, right? Just like you say that there are a number of times committees provide to us recommendations on their charge, and we discuss them and we decide, right? And if they want to provide input to this committee, I am 100% okay with that. If they, failing that, right, if it is also completely wrong that this is so biased towards the citizens trustees, right? There's as many citizens trustees on this body as there are all other community members, right? There's one of us, two library trustees. We should not equate the library trustees with the citizens trustees. First of all, the library trustees are public library trustees. The citizens library trustees are not. The library trustees are responsible for a unit that is 20 times larger in terms of use and size than citizens. And we also need a bigger say here, right? Every member of this committee has spent research and commitment time to this issue, every single one of us. We get one representative, and the citizens who, library trustees, and I have nothing against the citizens library trustees, get the majority say or half say here. If we're allowing the Citizens Library trustees to participate, I think we should do something like have two of them, two of the library trustees, and two of us, and go from there. I also think that an arrangement like that is more likely to make something that's palatable to both us and to town meeting. So I think that the structure of this is not good.
Okay. Of course, I disagree, but that's fine. How do we have this useful dialogue? Alyssa, why don't we start? You raised your hand, and then we can hear from the silent minority over here on my left.
So to the point that the citizens trustees should not be voting members, in a committee that is bringing a recommendation for a governance structure solution, I'm wondering why Memorial Library trustees or a select board member or staff or a Friends member would have any more claim to be a voting member. That doesn't make any sense to me. In terms of talking about the number of members from each different board, I'm very uncomfortable with the us versus them foundation of that. We are in this together. The citizens trustees and this board and a couple of memorial trustees and a couple of staff, the town manager and the library director of libraries, worked with that matrix, and there was a lot of agreement on what authority the citizens trustees have or should have in the future. There are different perspectives and opinions for sure, but, you know, for us to state definitively they are public library trustees or they are not public library trustees, those are opinions. We have different opinions on that. It's very, very difficult for me to entertain the idea that since 1962, a body that was created at town meeting has been exercising an authority that is illegitimate. That's something that's very difficult for me to accept. The Citizens Library is a public library. The annual report from 1963, the section from the Citizens Library, which was written by the librarian, described the year in terms of the first year as a Town of Acton public library. They've been functioning as public library trustees. The Citizens Library is a public library. And again, I will emphasize that everybody who is going to be on this committee is working towards a compromise, an agreement, a recommendation that will have majority support of all of these boards. So, you know, in terms of number of trustees, I mean, 2 citizens, which one are we going to propose not participate? They all need to be there. They are working really well together. They have very different skills and personalities and priorities. And it's going to be more efficient, and it's also going to be less likely to result in someone feeling that their voice was not heard. That's why we're here, because the process that got us Article 11 at town meeting was not inclusive enough, it was not transparent enough, and it needs to be an open public process that involves everyone. We're all in it together.
Okay, so hearing both of your points, I have a proposal about how we might adjust the document. I think for the most part, this group is going to be operating by consensus. But in the cases where there need to be votes, I think it might be fine to say each board has a vote. So the Citizens Library trustees would, if there is a vote, would have to agree among themselves. It might be 2-1, it might be 3-1 on how they're going to vote. So we need to hear from each of the, the reps about how they vote. That takes the power balance issue out of it, while still allowing the practical matter of having the the Citizens Library trustees be able to communicate with each other because of their small size, and they can't meet as 2 people. Putting 2 of them on a committee doesn't magically undo the quorum problem. So that would be my proposal for how to deal with the apparent voting imbalance, is just to revert to one vote per entity.
Sorry, of the 3 boards, so
Yeah.
each vote taken would have 3 entities voting, the Citizens Library trustees, the Memorial Library trustees, and the Select Board, which is just 1 person.
Yeah.
And so we are removing staff voting, and if we add a 9th member from the Friends,
I'm open to also having the staff have a vote, and to having this outside person have a vote. It might help break ties, it might help, help the discussion happen.
Okay.
Whichever meets. But now I would shift over to the left here to the quieter people, and see if any of these ideas meet with something you'd be willing to proceed with.
So I'm intrigued with your idea about each entity having a vote, but My thought was going to be that we increase the number of Memorial Library trustees on the committee.
Okay. 2, 3?
To 3.
Yeah.
To balance that way. I do think that staff should have a vote as well. And I do favor the idea of a, citizen at large from the Friends of the Acton Libraries also being a voting member. But I think, it's, I think that would balance it. I think that I think having more input from the Memorial Library, especially since eventually they're going to be taking on more responsibility for this library. So that's how I would favor it.
So back to you guys. So this is the idea of increasing the number of Acton Memorial Library trustees to 3, so it's equal. Would that fit for you guys? How about you? Okay, good. Got that one done. What's the next issue? No, we're going to wait till the end because you weren't.
The Acton Memorial Library Charter says nothing about being on a committee, anything about voting members. The Citizens Library trustees are already out.
I think what you're.
She's actually going to make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the Acton Memorial Library Charter does not say anything about being on a committee to try and tell the Citizens Library trustees what to do.
Right.
And so it's legally problematic to begin with, the whole thing.
But they're not a decision-making body, so let me review that.
No, I understand. I'm saying they're acting outside their charter, which strengthens a case against them. I'm just telling you, you're basically setting up a really huge and expensive case where we've got a bunch of lawyers that are working for free.
So Taylor, I'm sorry, I have to stop at this point because when people in the audience come and talk about creating lawsuits, I have to be very careful. I have to not just sort of let the conversation happen because I don't want to be creating things that are going to show up in depositions and court cases and all this expensive stuff.
I'm just saying be careful about what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not threatening anything. I'm saying that the more people do, the more the case gets stronger as opposed to finding consensus. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for that. I'd like to be a little more even-keeled, but that set my alarm bells off. Have an agreement among the board about rewriting to increase the number of trustees to 3. We have a concern raised about how that meets with the AML charter, and I'm sure we can talk to the AML folks about that. What's the next issue?
So first of all, about that, we can make an advisory committee for us comprised of anybody we would like.
Yeah.
Right, and it doesn't have to be sanctioned by anybody's charter or anything. And we create advisory committees to us all the time. But we have like 40 of them, right? So we can, that doesn't do anything to any legal case, which it's just nonsense. I have just a bunch of little issues, right? This document says things like that the CLT ensures a high level of personalized service. Frankly, I think that's insulting to the library staff, and so I would like that statement to be removed. Right, as if without the Citizens Library trustees, there is not a high level of personalized service, right? The service is provided by our library staff as it is, and I think that's an insulting statement.
There may be a way to rewrite that in such a way as to indicate that there is some important behavioral differences between what happens in a really large library and a really small library. I guess I'm thinking of that at the Citizens Library, people tend to come in one at a time. They tend to expect to be greeted by the librarian. This has sort of just become what happens at a small library, whereas no one would expect a librarian at the Acton Memorial Library to greet everyone who comes in the door. So there's a difference in what's sometimes been called the culture, but I understand that's a loaded word. But there's a difference in the feeling. I'm not saying one's good or bad. It was just a way of acknowledging that difference. David?
So to me, that I completely agree with the physical size of that library, the lighting, the whole thing, it's different. But that's not a result of the Citizens Library trustees ensuring that it happened, right? It is the inherent in the venue, right? And to imply in any way that the Citizens Library trustees somehow cajole library staff into treating people nicely is just offensive to me, right? I don't like that.
Yeah, I agree it could be rewritten.
And I'm, you know, if we're going to vote on this again, it could be, I'll read it again, right? So I think some things should not be suggested in this document if they are not possible, right? The Citizens Library trustees cannot have budget approval authority. Nobody has budget approval authority, right? And so that should not be offered as a possible outcome in this document. The CLT cannot have a formal role in building accessibility and maintenance. The town charter says that that's the responsibility of the town manager, anyway, they can't, right? So this document should not offer that. This document also refers as to whether the citizens trustees should be incorporated as a 501c3. And while that might be appropriate for a group that only manages the gift fund, it is inappropriate for a group that has any role in running a town service. So I'm okay with that being there as long as that it's clear that that if they are a 501c3, the only thing that they can do is manage the gift fund. If we think that they might have a role in running the town service, then they cannot be a charity. And I want to say that I'm fine with, you know, the grid that was produced and that kind of thing of responsibilities for the trustees, the Citizens Library trustees. I'm okay with many of those things. But I think that things that are not possible should not be offered in this document.
Make clear, David, are the things you mentioned, the budget approval and the 501c3 stuff, is that all in the comments afterwards, or is that in the, okay. Yeah, it's not a formal part of the charge. It was just some observations that we added to reflect what happened with that matrix. So there may be a way of making, you know, more of a division, you know, the charge ends here. Here are some comments, or separate it into two documents. Yeah. David?
Yeah, I don't think they belong in this document with any separation. You could put, you know, the things that are not possible, this is what I'm saying, things that are not possible should not be offered by this document, right? If someone has a scenario where it is possible, right, then okay, but they can't manage the building, they can't be a charity, and they can't approve their own budget, right? And so none of those things are possible, and so they should not be offered here, right? If this entity comes back and recommends to us that they must have budget approval authority, then we have to deal with that, I guess, right? But we should not offer something which is not possible.
Alyssa, you might have an idea about how to deal with this concern.
Yes, so I just wanted to offer from the Acton Memorial Library bylaws of the Board of Trustees. This is Article 2, Section 4. The board shall consult with the director in the preparation of the annual budget for the library and approve the director's budget recommendation to the town each year. So I disagree that a board of trustees for a library does not approve a budget that is created by staff. I'm also comfortable with just removing all of this text. I think, Jim, you and I both thought that it would be helpful to demonstrate how much consensus there already is and highlight some of the issues and questions that still need to be discussed and answered. I think that you were more comfortable putting a lot more than I was, and I argued for not spelling all of that out, just because this board generally, when it creates a committee, drafts a charge, and then the board votes on it after it discusses it. And I think that this is creating a lot of skepticism and concern among not just the board members, but members of the public and members of other boards. So I'm comfortable just removing that background section and making the edits to the charge as we've discussed tonight, and then bringing it back for a vote.
That seems like a very clean solution, that when we come back, it would just be the charge and not the secondary stuff. Great. Does that work for you, David?
That's fine.
Great. And
That's fine.
you okay? Okay, great.
May I make another?
Please.
So I just want to say that the citizens trustees are not public library trustees. The state law.
I just want to say that is your opinion, David.
No, state law outlines certain ways that public library trustees may be selected. Being appointed by town meeting is not one of those. So.
They aren't appointed by town meeting, they're elected by town meeting.
They have to be elected at the ballot, or appointed by certain authorities, or they can be corporate members.
So this isn't really, I don't think that this is germane to this board's discussion, but I have looked at a lot of other town boards, and they are appointed and elected a lot of different ways. And Chapter 78 actually spells out town, duly something meeting as one of the possibilities for election. But there's a lot to this. It's not as clean as you're presenting right now. And I also just want to say, I'm not advocating for any particular solution. I've tried to communicate this to a lot of folks. I don't know if I've done that here, but maybe just in one-on-one conversations. I am advocating for a solution. I don't know what the outcome of this committee is going to be, but I want us to center the patrons and the staff and come back with a solution that is acceptable to a lot of people. The process is very transparent and it's not legally problematic. But I don't think that this discussion of the charge of creating the committee needs to include all of those details and different perspectives and disagreements about what's what and who's who.
David.
I agree that that does need to be in the charge. So I have only one last thing.
Great.
And it actually goes to Alyssa's last point. I would like the charge to say up front that all the recommendations should be based on what's best for library patrons and consider the impact to library staff and costs of the changes. So that's almost what Alyssa said, and so hopefully, and I think that the purpose of this charge should be, in the first paragraph of the charge.
Alyssa?
So I would agree with all but the cost, because this is not, and I've read many minutes from both Memorial and Citizens boards, and these were minutes of town staff presentations to both boards about joining Amir-Lin and working closely together, and it was very clear from staff that this is not a cost-driven decision to have the two libraries work more closely together. It had to do with what was possible for patrons. One of the things that you've mentioned a few times, David, is the fact that people who requested books couldn't pick them up at Citizens until Citizens joined Amir-Lin. So whether or not it costs a bit more to have the two libraries working closely together and maintaining all of these benefits that I think most people agree are benefits, I don't think needs to be or should be in the charge. Definitely patrons and staff and maybe what's good for the town, but I think cost implies that we should go with the least expensive.
Close both libraries. That would save a lot of money. Yeah. David, you okay with the notion of the language that wouldn't specifically mention cost, but would mention what's best for the town?
Sure, that sounds
Great.
good.
Okay, good.
And it is in the first paragraph. The goal is to enhance the library patron and staff experience and maintain a close and collaborative relationship between the two libraries.
Yeah, we can add, but we can potentially change it to be more like the sentence that you rolled out earlier on. Yeah. So I think we have a bunch of drafting to do, throwing a bunch of stuff away and making some selected changes here, and then we'll come back. The only other thing I can think of to do, since it's only 10:20, we could even do one more thing. It's possible that it's worth discussing whether we want to affirm that while this process is playing out, that that we should, direct John to please continue operating the Citizens Library as a branch, or as if it was a branch, or what was you came up with the language before that's,
What I remember from the previous board's directive last January was that the Citizens Library would operate
Oh, right,
as
operate
a
as a
branch.
branch. Yeah, continue.
And we might need to clarify that it's under the direction of the director of Acton Libraries.
Right. Yeah, that might help with staff concerns and would help with, some of what we've heard here. That while this process plays out, please continue operating as a branch under the direction of the Acton Libraries. Is that something that people would be interested in discussing tonight as a motion? Dean would certainly be okay with that. You're okay with that? Okay. So let me see if I can turn that into words once more. While this advisory committee process is proceeding, please continue, that sounds like a request to somebody. So it's a direction to John, the town manager, to please continue operating the Citizens Library as a branch under the direction of the director of the Acton Libraries. Acton Libraries, she has a new title. Yeah. This is, okay, so that's a motion. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? No? All those in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye, yes, that's unanimous. Thank you. So we've got a way to proceed, and we will come back with a redeveloped document. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for everyone's patience with me.
I think it was, as I was hoping, that we improved the process and the document by having this discussion and being able to take the time to have the discussion. So I appreciate it.
I very much appreciate having the chance finally to have this discussion, so thanks.
Okay, now I have another sip of water before we go to approving recommended 2024 license renewals.
You better take 2 sips.
Yeah. I did get detailed directions from Lisa about how to go through this. You guys are having a great conversation, but maybe you could have it out in the hallway or something, or tomorrow? Okay, thanks. So I'm going to make a series of motions that might get seconds. These motions will include listing a whole bunch of names of restaurants, and in some cases, some additional information. Once we get the motions made and seconded, we'll see if there's any discussion that we want to have about them. And then we'll approve them or not, and then move on to the next one. Okay, first one. I move that we approve the license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell all kinds of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on premises as listed in the renewal master list, section 12, for $5,000, and listed herein. 7th Settlement South, DBA True West, Chakdi, DBA Benjerong, Concord Brewery, DBA Rapscallion Table to Tap, El Huiple Acton Restaurant Corporation, DBA El Huiple, Philo's Great Road, now Bella's Great Road, Great Road Seafood Sales, DBA Atlantic Seafood, Indoor Sports Management Incorporated, DBA Overtime Bar, Jaman Corporation, DBA Crossroads Cafe, Lee Fat Incorporated, DBA Spice Pepper Garden, Not Your Average Joe's Incorporated of Acton, Poe's Barbecue, DBA Ginger Court, Quail Ridge Country Club LLC, RFG Golf, DBA X Golf Acton, and Santa Fe Burrito. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion about any of those particular license renewals?
I would just like to ask if the board or staff knows of any issues regarding the proper adhering to the agreements in those licenses.
Well, I happen to, hey, Lisa, are there any known issues with these? No. So these are on these lists because they're operating okay. Okay. Lisa is nodding. Great. Thank you. And I will also note the sadness that Frolic and Detour is crossed out, not because they did anything wrong, but because they are choosing to close. Yeah. So we've had a motion. Did we get a second? We didn't vote. We didn't vote yet. We did get a second, though. Any other comments or questions before we vote on this one? No. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I move we approve retail packaged goods store license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell all kinds of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on premise as listed in the master renewal list, section 15, and as listed in this motion. Albi Corporation, DBA Buscemi's Town Line Convenience. Elm Associates, DBA Colonial Spirits. Pramukh Mahant Krupa Corporation, DBA Acton Wine and Spirit. Acton Liquor Corporation, DBA Acton Liquors. Vasudev Incorporated, DBA Red, White, and Brew. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other questions or discussions about these? All those in favor, please say yes or aye. Yeah.
Yes.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, then we'll go on to the next one. And I just love learning the real business names in the DBAs. Because who knew? Okay, I approve we move the common vittler's license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell wines and malts to be drunk on premise as listed in the master renewal list, section 12, for $2,000. And, did I just do that one?
Point of order,
Yes,
Mr.
please.
Chair, did you miss the section above?
Yes, I did. Let's go back, because it would be bad to do them in the wrong order. I move we approve the retail packaged goods store license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell wines and malt beverages, not to be drunk on premise, as listed in the master renewal list, section 15, for $1,500, and listed in this motion. Chalky Corporation, DBA Acton Convenience, Donnellan's Supermarket of Acton, Idlewild Farm Incorporated, RBSBW Incorporated, DBA Roach Brothers Supermarket of Acton, and Eve and Murray's. Second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion about these? No? All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
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 That's unanimous. Okay, on to the next one. I move we approve the common vittler's license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell wines and malts to be drunk on premise as listed in the master renewal list, section 12, for $2,000, and as listed in this motion. Bueno Acton LLC, DBA Bueno Isano. Acton Bolidrome, DBA Burgerdrome. Squash West General On Premises, GOP. New London Style Pizza, Twins of Acton. Twins Seafood of Acton. Acton Auto Boutique. No, I'm skipping a page, surely. Oh, that was the end. Okay, Twin Seafood, that was the last one. Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on those? All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Yes.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, time to focus, because here's the motion on one page and the list is on the next page. And some of these I have to say the addresses because there's more than one location. Okay. I move we approve the Class 2 used car licenses as listed in the master renewal list for $100 and as listed in the motion. Acton Auto Boutique, Acton Family Automotive, Acton Gas, Alpha Cars and Ural of New England, Atlantis Auto Plaza, Auto Dealers Exchange of Concord Incorporated, DBA Odessa Concord, J. Scott Motors, J. Stackhouse Enterprises Incorporated, Wholesale Auto Sales Incorporated, Mildam Leasing Company of 99 Great Road, Northeast Collections Incorporated of 107 Great Road, Suite 1 and 2, New Garage LLC, Northeast Collection Incorporated of 107 Great Road, Suite 3, Northeast Collection Incorporated, 442 Great Road, The Fifth Element, 448 Great Road, Garage 42, Valet Pro Detailing. That's it. Maybe there's a second out there. Thanks. Any questions or concerns, comments? No? All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Yes.
Yes?
Aye.
That's unanimous again. Okay, we're on a roll here. I move to approve the Class 1 new car licenses as listed in the master renewal list for $100 and as listed in the motion. Acton Ford Incorporated, Acton Lincoln Mercury Incorporated, Alpha Cars and Earl of New England, Eric Gilfax, DBA Leasefax, Gordon Chevrolet Incorporated, DBA Colonial Chevrolet, McGovern Subaru of Acton, McGovern Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, and Swanson Buick GMC Truck Incorporated.
Second.
Great. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You have a hand
Hey, there's a
raised.
comment or a question from the back. Lisa. Yes, I would like to amend my motion to remove Acton Lincoln Mercury, Inc. Will this friendly amendment be accepted by the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Where were we? We got a second. We asked for questions and comments. Lisa gave a comment. Any other questions or comments? No. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Yes.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous again, as amended. Then we're not doing that one. Okay, I move we renew bowling alley and billiard table license as listed in the master renewal list. That's $10 per alley and $10 per table at Acton Bolidrome.
Second.
Yay. Any other questions or comments? Love the Bolidrome. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, that's everyone there. I move to approve the 24-hour permit as listed in the master renewal list for $1,500. And as listed in the motion, it's just CVS 400 Mass Ave only. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Yes?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous again. Okay, back to the Bolidrome. I move we approve automatic amusement devices as listed in the master renewal list, $100 per machine. That's Indoor Sports Management Incorporated, which has 9 games, and Acton-Boxborough, which has 50 machines.
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment that I didn't know that we called them automatic amusement devices.
Yes, you can call them that anytime you want, and people will be very confused or amused. All those in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
Yes.
I saw yeses or ayes all around. That's approved unanimously. Okay, we're getting to the last big one. I move to approve the following common vittlers licenses as listed in the master renewal list for $100. Seventh Settlement South LLC, DBA True West, Acton Coffee House, Acton House of Pizza, Acton Indoor Sports, Acton Seafood Sales, DBA Atlantic Sea Grill, AP Pizzeria, 168 Great Road, Bagels Plus, Benjerong Restaurant, Blackbird Cafe, Bueno Isano of Acton, Burger Drome, also known as Acton Boladrome, Crossroads Cafe, D Capri Pizzeria, Donnellan's Supermarket, Dunkin' Donuts of 100 Powder Mill Plaza, Dunkin' Donuts of 315 Main Street, and Dunkin' Donuts of 182 Great Road, El Huiple Acton Restaurant, Philo's Great Road, Ginger Court, Junior's Pizza, Legend Cafe, McDonald's, 55 Great Road, New London Style Pizza of Acton, Not Your Average Joe's of Acton, Quail Ridge Country Club, Rapscallion Table to Tap, Sorrento's Pizzeria, Spice Pepper Garden, Starbucks at 411 Mass Ave, Subway at 134 Great Road, and Subway at 255 Main Street, and Twins Seafood. That's TWINS, apostrophe S. Yes, thank you.
Second?
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Lisa.
Bella's, yeah, okay.
Say, sorry?
Philo's striking.
Oh, okay, right, different name, change of name, okay. Bella's Great Road.
I didn't know they were changing the name. Oh, sorry.
You had a question or a
Oh,
comment?
well, no, I wasn't aware they were changing the name, but that's what,
Yes,
neither
new
here nor.
owners. We actually got to briefly meet the new owner, and they are also changing their name, and they are almost open again. Yeah,
So I second the change from Philo's Great Road to Bella's Great Road.
thank you, thank you. So we've changed that in the motion, and are there any other comments about all these fabulous places? They're making me hungry. Okay, all those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I hate to do this, but
No, it's all good. Let's do it right.
I'd like to verify this with Lisa. If we go back to the retail packaged goods, the $1,500 licenses, still at Donlin Supermarket at 248 Central Street?
Oh, yes. Luckily, I didn't read the address out loud.
Yep.
Yes.
Um,
That's
Is that the correct address?
It hasn't been there for a long time.
What's presumably Great Road, first of all.
And
Okay.
is that still the same manager? I know that, okay. And the other
Yeah,
one.
so he's the manager, so it's not the owner anymore.
It is 248 Great Road.
Oh, great, okay, good.
Okay, and then the other one I question is, under the Class 2 used car licenses, and I don't recall if this one was read or not, J Stackhouse Enterprises. That house has been sold, I don't, and the individual has moved out of town.
So did he fill out an application to be charged again? Because, maybe he doesn't want to be charged again. Okay, so we're going to go back and reconsider that motion, the one about the Class 2 used car licenses, to remove J. Stackhouse Enterprises. I remake my, let's see, how do we do this when we've already approved it? Do we just like make a new motion, or how do we change things after we've approved them? I'm looking at my parliamentarians here. Anybody got?
So I think we have to vote to reconsider.
Okay.
And vote to make a change.
Okay. I would move to reconsider the Class 2 used car licenses.
Second.
Any discussion on that idea? All those in favor of reconsidering this, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yes. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, now we are reconsidering it. I move,
I think you can just move to what you said before.
okay,
except
I
without-
move to change this motion to remove J. Stackhouse Enterprises.
Second.
Great. And any other questions or comments about that, other than thank you, Dean, for pointing this out, and thank you, Lisa, for confirming.
Will we confirm with J. Stackhouse Enterprises?
Lisa, is there any kind of action that needs to be taken with J. Stackhouse, or is this just a mistake that this is in here and he's already not applied? Okay. Reconfirm in the morning. Thank you. Yeah, if we have to have an emergency meeting to reapprove his license, we can do that. We've done that sort of thing before. Yeah. Okay, so that was, it was moved and seconded to make the change. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye. Aye.
Yes, okay. We have done that as well. Lisa, since you're the grand master of this process, are we done now? Okay, Lisa is nodding yes. Great, thank you. Okay, now we have consent items. I will point out that the author, the number 9 was recently handed to us at the beginning of the meeting. There it is, it's also in the packet. I will now read through them. If anyone wants to hold any of them, let me know. Okay. Authorize town manager to enter into a memorandum of agreement with Health Insurance Trust and Acton-Boxborough Regional School District.
Hold.
Approve meeting minutes, November 6th, 20th, and December 4th, 2023. Appoint Asude Yagmur and an at-large member, as an at-large member of the Human Services Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2026. And I just made a little typo correction there, so let the record show it should be as instead of and. 12, appoint Stuart Amir-Lin as an associate member of the Land Stewardship Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2024. Accept request for donation to the Sidewalk Fund from One Timberway LLC as stated in the Planning Board Decision Number 22-07, Condition 3.1.1. Approve request from Acton-Boxborough Farmers Market for the use of Elm Street Playground from June 16th to October 13th, 2024. Accept gift from Maxime McQuilkin for $97 to be deposited in the Conservation Division's Scout account from proceeds of fundraising bake sale towards Eagle Scout project. So that suggests a motion to approve items 10 through 15.
So moved.
Maybe there's a second out there?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No, there wouldn't be a discussion. That's how they're consent items. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
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 Yes, okay, that's everyone. So, David, talk to us about item 9.
So there are two things in the agreement that are not filled in. And they were highlighted in our copy, and I'm wondering if we should not approve it without them being filled in. The first one for the amount, I think that we could do a simple subtraction to get the amount, which should be 2 million minus 1,549,000. But the date, I don't know.
441. Okay. Well, we got an assistant town manager here who could probably communicate with the town manager or have some information about that. Tom, you got any thoughts about this one?
I can confirm that the total that we're obligated to pay is $451,000. Yep, I can confirm that. For the date, I don't have that. I'm trying to look through emails. If you wouldn't mind bearing with me, I can text the town manager to see if I can have an answer.
Great. He probably wants a break from drying out his basement. Yeah, let's let that sit there for a minute before we decide how to proceed. I do remember an email that went out from John that said, oh, what's the date? But I wasn't CC'd on the response. Or maybe he's even in the virtual audience. Did he like switch to the phone and he's part of the meeting?
He was there for a short time. He's
Okay.
not now.
Okay,
Well, unless he's a panelist. Hold on a second. Nope, he's not on.
okay. We'll just have an awkward silence for a minute or two while we work this out. It's only quarter of 11.
Could we do the meeting evaluation?
Yeah, let's do the meeting evaluation.
Of course, something could go really bad on this item that we wouldn't cover.
Let's see. I'm so happy I kept kicking items out of this agenda. I'm much happier with having a smaller number of items and being able to get through them. In particular, we would have run out of time and patience to do the important Citizens Library work. What else? Just on my own personal behalf, I'll apologize for losing my temper with Tara, and we'll happily talk with her after the meeting to, make it up. What else? We still have plenty of work to do on giving feedback to the town manager about the budget and priorities. David's been wanting to talk about the capital projects for at least a couple of meetings, and look forward to going deeper into that discussion with everyone. And it was also great to have the Finance Committee here. As I was saying as they left, there's going to be a lot of communication back and forth between us and them to get through this override process. So I'm glad we got a chance to meet with them. I think that's it for me. Other thoughts about things that went well, things that didn't go well, or things that we could learn from, or follow-up items that we need for future meetings.
I also appreciate the shorter agenda. I've looked back at agendas and noticed that somewhere between, depending on the length of time a particular agenda item takes, and how controversial or not a public hearing is, somewhere between 6 and 9 or 10. And I think we've had over that. I would like to bring back the RFP for the sewer commission analysis. There are, ways to finance that. A lot of people are going to ask us, why are we spending money on whatever it is we decide to spend money on in this particular year? But we don't need to touch the general fund for that. And I want to suggest that some boards in this town and boards in other towns open their meetings with, this is how the board conducts business in public and when we might take public comment. And I'm wondering if we can craft something like that, which, reiterates that during resident concerns, we, for reasons of OML, open meeting law, will not respond, but we, hope to follow up with people via email or in person, over coffee or an office hour. But also, I would really like us to refer to the code of conduct that's hanging on the wall right outside the door. Specifically, obviously, we need to protect First Amendment rights, but we can also invite people to remember common courtesy and respect when they're in this building, interacting with us and also with staff and with other members of the community who are here speaking.
Thanks. other comments about follow-ups we need, or what went well, or what we could learn from and do better next time? Okay, great, thanks, everyone. Did something magical happen about the date?
It did.
Yay!
So just a clarification, the town manager is looking and requesting permission for authority to sign this. This may change slightly, but the bones of it are pretty much solid. The date is tentatively 2026. So the two blanks would be $451,000 in 2026.
Beginning of 2026 or the end of 2026?
I just know 2026.
Okay,
which
by
gives us a little bit of
2026
a-
sounds like the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Is
David?
this FY or calendar?
Oh, yeah, fiscal year 2026 or calendar 2026? We got the text machine right there. Or we can approve this memorandum of agreement with the understanding there might be minor changes to be done.
I think that if the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
I think that if the board is comfortable with 2026, whether it's calendar or fiscal, I know that that's about a 6-month difference, then if you approved it in theory, then we can come back if there's any edits and notify you of that as well.
Okay, I see a thumbs up from Alyssa. David, you okay with that? So the motion is to approve this, having the town manager sign a memorandum of agreement in substantially this form that we're seeing here.
I thought we were filling in the date.
Oh, yeah,
we
okay.
have a change.
And filling in the amount of 451,000
And the date. by
and the date of 2026.
I would just say by the end of 2026.
But he might change it to he might need to change it to the beginning of 2026 or the beginning of fiscal year 2026. So we're giving him some slack to fill in the exact number.
I guess that's okay, but I think, Alyssa, you might know, I think Steve has talked about doing it during 2026.
Okay.
Right, and I don't know if you know from the,
I remember within 2 years. I
Okay.
don't remember a date.
So the payment will be going in the end of this year when it's due. So I guess 2 years from now would be roughly beginning of 2026. So if there was some leeway and it was just 2026, but if the board wanted to have a date tied to that or an end, I would say maybe end of 26 to give a little bit of wiggle room. And again, if there are changes, once this is solidified, we'll come back and notify the board of that as well.
Alyssa?
I do have a question about who signs for the health insurance trust. I'm going to guess that that is the chair of the health insurance trust, but I also want to know, if it's possible to know, whether as a trustee I should recuse myself from this board's approval. And even if we don't know that, I'm happy to just recuse myself or.
Couldn't hurt, because we still have
Okay.
4 other people here
Yeah.
that will vote for it.
I will recuse myself as a trustee of the health insurance trust, just to play it safe.
Okay, and as the chair, if I need to, I will.
Are you a trustee?
Yes,
Are you-
she is
oh,
an
you are?
actual trustee.
Oh.
Yeah, she's not just like a liaison.
Yeah, you
She's like a
could have,
trustee.
you could have told me that before you gave me that assignment.
Yes, it's a secret, tougher assignment. Yeah, Himija did that. So I'm still a little unclear about the exact motion here. David or Alyssa, well, you're recusing yourself. Do you want to try turning this into words again? I got most of the way through it, and then I got stuck.
sure, I move that we allow the town manager to sign the memorandum of agreement between the school system, the HIT, and the town, filling in the 2 missing fields for amount of $451,000 and date of the end of fiscal 2026.
Okay, second on that?
Second.
Okay. Great. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous among the 4 of us.
I move to
And,
adjourn.
oh, there's a movement to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say yes or aye. Yes.
Yes.
That's everyone. We're done. Thanks, everyone.